Pokemon. The starter Pokemon is Agumon. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 101: The Correct Way to Open Lucario. Ginga Team Cadre Suxing. After seeing the other person's appearance clearly and confirming that the other person had seen him, Qingliu stopped what he was doing without any hesitation, then turned around and went directly into the bushes and disappeared into the jungle. Suxing on the helicopter suddenly saw this scene and was a little unresponsive for a while. It was normal for her to find this suspicious kid, but she was a little surprised when she found that the other party not only did not continue to run, but stopped. Unexpectedly, he dared to raise his middle finger to provoke her. Provocation? Interesting. Suxing sneered. If the other party dared to do this series of actions, it meant that the other party might have guessed her identity or purpose. This surprised her, but it didn't change anything. Then he looked at the member of the Galaxy team who was operating the helicopter and said, "You continue to help us confirm his position in the sky, and coordinate the reinforcements sent from the headquarters." Understood. But Captain, the other party doesn't seem to be simple. Don't we need to wait for the reinforcements to arrive before we act together? It is precisely because the other party is not simple that we can't follow common sense and put down the ladder. Yes. Looking at the last team member climbing down the ladder, Suxing said quickly. Next, separate but make sure to move forward within a certain range. If there are any clues, the first thing is to report. Do you understand? Understood. Seeing the three people nod, Suxing immediately assigned the directions of several people, and he released the tank skunk to rush in the direction of Qingliu just now. Qingliu stared at the four Pokemon that appeared in different positions on the panel, turned around and continued to run wildly. But soon, the sound of a helicopter flying overhead was heard, and the strong light of the searchlight fell nearby. One person determines the position, and four people chase. Qingliu glanced at the top of his head, and then found that the four people on the panel began to slightly adjust their positions. He immediately turned around and ran towards the place where the bushes and trees were more dense. At the same time, he took out the Poké Ball of the blue cotton bird, placed it on his head, and fed it an energy cube. Blue cotton bird, you will have to work hard next, but you don't have to keep vomiting like before. You just need to cover the area near the two of us. Chirp chirp. The blue cotton bird, who looked a little tired, also knew that the current situation was a little anxious. After swallowing the energy cube in one gulp, it opened its beak and spit out more a ball of white gas, covering itself and Qingliu. At the same time, the mist slowly spread to the surroundings. With the cover of the mist and the dense bushes above, the searchlight of the helicopter could not hit it, and the positioning method based on this method would be ineffective in a short time. Seeing that the speed of the four Pokemon on the panel was gradually slowing down, Qingliu knew that his plan had worked. The next step is to try to get rid of them. Qingliu took a deep breath, then exhaled the foul air in his body while squeezing out all the remaining strength and continued to run wildly. Relying on his familiarity with the jungle in a normal ecological environment, Qingliu quickly pulled away from Suxing and others who were following him, and even almost threw the four of them out of the detection range of the panel for the surrounding Pokemon. However, people have their limits. Even for a body like his that exercises regularly, is relatively healthy and has good endurance, after running at a speed for more than half an hour in the jungle, he also ushered in a serious period of fatigue. Qingliu stopped and took 2 deep breaths. After feeling a dull pain in his body, he knew that he could not continue running like this. Chi. The blue bird above his head was also panting, and the feeling of exhaustion was beyond words. After all, he was just born. Even if he had strong vitality and good innate physical qualities, after such continuous tossing and continuous use of moves, his physical strength has reached the limit. Thank you for your hard work. Take a good rest next. After putting the bluebird back into the Poké Ball, Qingliu slowly stood up and looked at the helicopter hovering in the air not far away. I underestimated the physical strength and endurance of these guys. As expected, they are worthy of being the most powerful villain organization in the Sinnoh region. It's so troublesome just to send out one cadre and several team members. And the zombie Tyrannosaurus made too much noise at the curtain gym. After these guys see the place of the curtain gym, there is a high probability that they will increase their manpower. Since we can't get rid of these guys now, we have no choice but to take the initiative. Qingliu took out 2 Poké Balls from his pocket. The bluebird is not strong enough, and Tyrannosaurus is now extremely weak and seriously injured. There are only 2 Pokémon that can be used now. One is the legendary Shiraishi, and the other is Lucario. Qingliu looked at Shiraishi and quickly scanned the panel. Status: shattering. Countdown 15 minutes, almost. Although I don't know what level the Blue Eyes White Dragon will be after the legendary White Stone is broken, according to Agumon's situation at the time, it will not be lower than level 10. In addition, the setting is different from that of the Pokemon world, which can more or less provide me with some combat power. After putting it away, Qingliu looked at Lucario's Poké Ball. Because Lucario was coerced by me and for his own reasons, after the Poké Ball was also melted by zombie Tyrannosaurus, he had to put it into a brand new ball. With a previous healing spray and the energy cubes given to it when it was put into the Poké Ball, its physical strength should have recovered a lot at this time. The panel swept across Lucario's Poké Ball. Status: weak, continuously recovering. That's enough. Press the button, accompanied by a flash of red light, and the dog-shaped Pokemon Lucario appeared in front of him. Without waiting for it to speak, Qingliu said directly without much time delay, "You should know what the situation is now in the Poké Ball. Those guys from Team Galactic are chasing me. If I am caught by them, you can't escape. I asked you to take Kokugo to lead just now, which is already a kindness. Now you must help." Lucario was silent for a moment, slowly raised his head, and said in a voice transmission, "After getting rid of Team Galactic, you must let me go." "No problem." Qingliu agreed without any hesitation. Seeing that Qingliu agreed so straightforwardly, his expression changed, and then he asked, "How do you want me to help you? I am still a long way from recovering half of my physical strength, and it is impossible for me to fight at a high intensity." "I know." Qingliu raised his head and looked at the black helicopter with a searchlight sweeping everywhere, which was less than 200 meters away from them. "Let's not talk about the battle first. Now I need you to help me shoot down that annoying plane. There are still 4,000 words, early in the morning, and the group needs to be reviewed, don't worry." Chapter 102, Attack and Defense Change. Lucario raised his head and looked at the plane that Qingliu mentioned. "With him following us, we can't move." When in the Poké Ball, Lucario also observed the situation outside, and naturally knew how much effort Qingliu had put in to get rid of the plane's tracking, but in the end, all failed. There is an essential gap between manpower and machinery, and it must be resolved so that both sides can return to the situation of walking on 2 legs. "No problem." Seeing Lucario agreed, Qingliu then simply arranged a tactic. Qingliu was used as bait to attract attention, and Lucario suddenly attacked and destroyed the plane. After the arrangement was completed, Qingliu quickly ran to a slightly open place, bent over and pretended to breathe heavily, while Lucario jumped a few times and hid on the branches of a tall and dense tree. Buzz buzz buzz. The propeller rotated at high speed like a tireless hyperactive ape. The member of the Galaxy team who was controlling the flight on the helicopter soon found Qingliu, and then quickly rushed to the position above Qingliu, and the searchlight instantly focused on Qingliu. "That's the end, kid." The helicopter pilot picked up the communicator and was about to report the information and coordinates to Suxing. Qingliu on the ground seemed to be suddenly stimulated and rushed out at an incredibly fast speed again. Seeing this, the pilot couldn't help but stop what he was doing and control the plane to chase him again. "I want to see whether you can run faster with your legs or fly faster." The Galaxy team helicopter pilot was not panicked at all by Qingliu's reaction. Even if humans can run faster, they can't outrun Pokemon, let alone machines that don't require any effort at all. He immediately controlled the helicopter to chase after him. Qingliu ran in front and he chased behind. But soon he found something wrong, because Qingliu stopped in the middle of the road after running less than a few dozen meters, turned around and looked at the helicopter. With the help of the light, he could still vaguely see the disdainful expression on his face. An ominous premonition came to his mind, and he hurriedly pulled up the plane, but everything was too late. On a nearby tree, a Lucario suddenly appeared. It put its hands together at its waist, and a blue energy was brewing in it. Wave missile. It's over. This thought suddenly came to the driver's mind. The next second, a blue wave missile was launched and hit the helicopter fuselage directly, punching a hole in it with unstoppable force. Boom. The violent energy caused a violent explosion, and the entire helicopter was instantly broken in half and fell to the ground in a blazing flame. After Lucario confirmed that the plane had crashed, he jumped in front of Qingliu. It's done. Now you can leave without any worries. Leave? Qingliu chuckled and said, why should we leave? Hearing this, Lucario frowned and said, now that their plane is gone, isn't it a good opportunity to leave? In theory, it is true. I had the same idea as you before, but, after being chased by these guys for almost an hour, I have to collect some interest. Understanding Qingliu's meaning, Lucario frowned and said, now is not the time to hold a grudge. This is not a grudge. I am a generous person. How can I hold a grudge? I just want them to know not to chase me for some unrealistic ideas. Qingliu said expressionlessly. It is not necessary to eliminate all these pursuers, but at least beat 2 of them to vent their anger. What do you want to do? Qingliu did not answer. He looked at the summoning panel that appeared in front of him and was only visible to him. Without the information and coordinates provided by the plane at all times, the speed of the 4 people from Jupiter began to slow down again, and even the direction began to deviate. A little deviation will become more and more crooked as time goes by, until it completely deviates. Now that they have lost a radar, and they have an accurate GPS, the relationship between hunters and prey has quietly changed. Attack and defense. Transformation. As for what to do now? Qingliu decided to wait and see. Qingliu took out a healing spray and the intermediate energy cube purchased in Sui Town from the capsule backpack and handed it to Lucario. The only thing you have to do now is to take the time to rest and recover your strength. After that, he ignored it and took out the Poké Ball of Tyrannosaurus and released it. Lucario is enough for the battle in this short period of time. Take advantage of this time to treat Tyrannosaurus's injuries and speed up its recovery, so that it can get rid of the negative effects of forced evolution as soon as possible. With a flashing red light, the 6-meter-tall Tyrannosaurus fell to the ground at this moment, with countless scars all over his body and weak breath. It can be seen that the forced evolution into a zombie Tyrannosaurus is too much of a burden on its body. Even though it has been simply treated before, it has not yet regained consciousness. Qingliu then stuffed a few transformed energy cubes into Tyrannosaurus' mouth, took out the healing spray and began to clean up the injuries bit by bit. Hiss. It seems that Qingliu's movement was too big, or the wound was too deep. Although he was unconscious, he still showed a painful expression. Lucario next to him watched silently for a moment, raised his claws slightly, and the appendages behind his ears floated up. The light blue wave power wrapped around the place where Qingliu just touched. This should cause less stimulation to it. Qingliu reached out his hand again and gently touched the place wrapped by the wave power. His fingers easily passed through the wave, but Tyrannosaurus did not unconsciously show a painful expression like before. Seeing this, Qingliu began to deal with it quickly. With the assistance of Lucario, after nearly 10 minutes, Qingliu finally cleaned the more serious wounds of Tyrannosaurus and applied medicine. After confirming that there was no problem again and again, Qingliu breathed a sigh of relief, but the sound transmitted by Lucario's wave came to his ears. I'm sorry. Qingliu didn't look at it. While taking Tyrannosaurus back, he said, since the price has been paid, there is no need to apologize, and the person we are waiting for has arrived. Hearing Qingliu's words, Lucario's wave guide spread out instantly. After realizing that there was indeed a person and a Pokemon approaching, he couldn't help but look at Qingliu twice more. Even its wave guide power, which was good at detecting information, couldn't detect the target at the first time, but this human could actually sense it. The unknown powerful and terrifying Pokemon plus the mysterious detection ability, Lucario suddenly found that this combination might be more unusual than it imagined. But now is obviously not the time to think about this, because a young man with short green hair and wearing the uniform of the Galaxy Team soldier has come to less than 200 meters away from them. They only need to pass through a few bushes and the two sides will meet. Lucario immediately got ready for battle. Seeing this, Qingliu glanced at it speechlessly. I'm a little suspicious about how you got to this level. This isn't a regular alliance battle. Why are you standing there like an idiot? Just use the wave missile to bombard him before he comes over. There are still 2,000. Chapter 103, Jupiter attacks, White Dragon arrives. Lucario looked at Qingliu, who was completely different from how he had treated Tyrannosaurus just now, and was surprised for a moment before he began to act. Just as Qingliu said, since it was confirmed that the opponent came with hostility, then naturally he could not use a proper fighting method to solve the problem. Mobilizing the wave power to cover the surroundings, Lucario confirmed the opponent's position, and the blue wave power surged, gathered at the front of his palm and compressed into a ball, and began to bombard the target one after another. The members of the Galaxy team, who had never expected to be ambushed, were caught off guard and had no time to make any effective defense or counterattack. Instead, Zubat, who was flying beside him, quickly flapped his wings to push the young man away, and spit out a dark purple energy ball from his open mouth to block it. But the wave missile of Lucario at level 48 was not so easy to be blocked. Swish! The wave missile and Zubat's shadow ball just touched, and the wave missile destroyed it and shot straight towards the target. Bang! 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 4 explosions followed, clouds of dust rose, Zubat fell to the ground, and the young man shook his head, which was dizzy from the explosion. Who is it? How dare you attack our Galaxy team? Do you want to die? The young man shouted around, then took out a Poké Ball and looked around with a vigilant look. In his impression, the target they were tracking might have something very dangerous and powerful, but that was just external force. It was unlikely that the target, who was in his teens, would have any powerful Pokémon. The person who attacked him was most likely another Pokémon hunter or something like that. But he was a member of the Galaxy team, so he was not afraid of him at all. In the Sinnoh region, especially not far from Vale City, anyone who had a little knowledge of the underground world had to give the Galaxy team a face, which was the confidence of their strongest organization in the Sinnoh region. With his confidence, he had blackmailed several guys who had conflicts. Come out and apologize now. I can still pretend that nothing happened. Otherwise, when our captain finds out that someone dared to interfere with our Galaxy team's mission, things will not be so simple. The Galaxy team youth shouted loudly. But unlike the other party's reaction after hearing about the Galaxy team in the past, this time no one responded to him, no one paid attention to him, and no one went out to apologize. What greeted him was only Lucario's 3 consecutive wave missiles. Fuck. Boom. As the wave missiles fell, the young man was directly knocked unconscious by the explosion caused by the energy disorder and collapsed to the ground. Qingliu and Lucario walked out of the bushes and looked at the young man lying on the ground. What should we do next? As the appendage behind the ear fell, Lucario retracted the wave power and took 2 heavy breaths. Aowagi asked, how long can your physical strength last? 1 or 2 more of these guys should be the limit. If there are more, there will be no way. Lucario looked at the young man on the ground and said, 1 or 2. Aowagi squatted down, took the communicator from the young man's ear and stomped on it, then began to search his body. After taking away some change and a few empty Poké Balls, Aowagi took 3 Poké Balls from the young man's waist. One was for a level 24 Golbat that had lost its combat ability, and the other 2 were a level 24 Houndoom and a level 15 Armor. Aowagi pressed the switch, and 2 figures suddenly appeared in front of him. Woo! Lily! The 2 Pokémon that appeared found that the young man fell to the ground and that it was Aowagi who released them. Their expressions suddenly became solemn. Armoroom took a defensive posture, while Houndoom remained silent, but its body sank slightly, tentatively approaching Aowagi little by little. Boom! Almost as soon as it moved a little distance, Lucario, who had been standing next to it, flashed in front of it, pressed its claws against its head, and pressed it heavily to the ground. Don't move. Lucario's wave guide was directly transmitted into Houndoom's mind, and at the same time, the wave guide power in his hand was gradually concentrated on its mouth. Feeling the terrifying aura of this kind in front of him, Houndoom swallowed a mouthful of saliva and dared not act rashly again. Seeing this, Qingliu turned his head and took a look. However, he was not looking at Houndoom, but Lucario. To be honest, Lucario's set of grappling movements can be said to be fast, accurate and ruthless. It almost gave Houndoom no time and opportunity to react. Even before he could see the movements clearly, Houndoom was already pressed to the ground and his neck was stuck. Thinking of Lucario's flexible and graceful movements in the previous battle, which made Tyrannosaurus almost untouchable, Qingliu had some thoughts in his mind. Thoughts surged in his mind, and he glanced at Houndoom who was sitting quietly on the ground, and then his eyes fell on the last wrist strength. In this tense atmosphere, the level 15 Armlet suddenly raised his hands. What is your relationship with him? Qingliu pointed at the young man in front of him. Houndoom and Armlet were silent for a moment, and finally shook their heads. Then you are free. After saying that, Qingliu smashed the Poké Ball and threw the wreckage aside. After feeling that the Poké Ball's restraint on them was indeed no longer there, Houndoom and Armlet looked at each other, and left with Zubat without any hesitation. To level 24, 1 level 15, the Pokemon of the ordinary members of the Galaxy team are configured at around level 20. You just said that you can still deal with 1 or 2 of these guys, right? Qingliu asked slowly. Just don't delay too much time to consume your physical strength. If possible, it's best to go together. Hearing Lucario's reply, Qingliu nodded. Then he looked at the other 3 Pokemon displayed on the panel. They were still heading in the direction they were last confirmed by the plane. If I remember correctly, Jupiter's main Pokemon is Tank Skunk, so just avoid Tank Skunk. There are only 3 left in the 4-man team that was tracking him on foot. Jupiter is on the far left, and the one who was just killed and now lying on the ground is the one who rushed in the front, and the remaining 2 are on the right. And for some reason, the distance between the 2 is very close, almost standing side by side. It seems that God is helping me. Seeing the Pokemon of the 2 people close together, Qingliu couldn't help laughing. In this way, there is no need to find them one by one, and the 2 can be killed at once. Zizzy. 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 2 people lost contact in such a short time. It seems that this kid is more difficult than expected. After hearing the harsh sound of electricity coming from the communicator, but not receiving any response, Jupiter's face became solemn. Also, how did he find the 2 people so quickly and end the battle? Is it luck or? On the other side, a man and a dog rushed back in the direction where the 2 Galaxy team members were, and found a hidden bush and ambushed them. After the 2 approached, Lucario gathered a wave of missiles and attacked, knocking down the 2 Pokemon guarding the 2 members of the Galaxy team without giving them time to react. Then Lucario sprinted quickly, and the bone stick in his hand lit up and directly picked up the Poké Ball that one of the members had just opened, and smashed the Poké Ball of another member with a backhand stick. In the case of the first attack, 2 Pokemon of the opponent were eliminated, and then 2 more were eliminated in the second round of attack. The 2 members of the Galaxy team quickly threw out the remaining 3 Pokemon of more than 20 levels to fight Lucario, who was seriously injured and in a weak state and could only exert the combat power of 20 to 30 levels. But even with the advantage in numbers and status, these 3 Pokemon still did not have much impact on Lucario. Because they could not touch Lucario at all. Lucario dragged his injured body and shuttled between the 3 Pokemon, attacking and dodging smoothly, without revealing any flaws at all. Soon, with a swing of Bone Stick Smash, the last Pokemon fell down, and Lucario immediately took the Bone Stick and knocked out the remaining 2 members of Team Galaxy, and began to clean up the battlefield. Whether it is attacking, defending, or dodging, there is a special ethereal feeling. It seems to be a special skill. Qingliu said to himself while recalling the details of the battle just now. If Tyrannosaurus and others mastered such a skill, it would definitely be a good improvement in strength. Lucario, who had been spreading the power of wave, soon noticed Qingliu's thoughts and took the initiative to explain. This is a breathing method, using breathing techniques to activate the body faster and stronger, so that the body can achieve the strongest effect within the range it can bear. If you want to learn, I can teach you. Before Qingliu could speak, a cold and arrogant female voice suddenly sounded in the sky not far away. Finally caught you too. An armored bird flapping its red wings and emitting a faint metallic luster was approaching rapidly, and the purple-haired Jupiter was on the back of the armored bird, looking down at Qingliu and Lucario. Seeing the other party suddenly appear here, Qingliu narrowed his eyes. The panel showed that the tank skunk was still far away from here, and the armored bird was also within the detection range of the panel, but Qingliu didn't expect that Jupiter could actually detect it and decisively split up with her main Pokemon. It seems that I thought these people of the Galaxy team were too simple. Very confused, huh? Suxing laughed coldly. Ever since you were able to accurately find my men several times, I suspected that you should have something that can find our location. I didn't expect it to be true. At the end, Suxing stretched out his hand and said, "Kid, hand over the thing that you raised the curtain gem to the ground, and I can let you go." Ignoring Suxing's words, Aoki said calmly, "You dropped a level 30 tank skunk, and then chased you with a level 25 armored bird. Aren't you afraid that I will kill you in return?" Counterattack. Suxing looked at Aoki, who changed the subject. He was not dissatisfied. Instead, he couldn't help laughing and said, "I also prepared 2 other backup Pokemon. How did you kill them in return? I'm not mistaken. This should be Kokugo's Lucario? Although I don't understand why it is here with you, Its strength is indeed very strong, but its current situation should not be optimistic, right? Lucario's expression was solemn. Just as Suxing said, after dealing with the two members of Team Galactic, its physical strength was almost at its limit, and it was almost impossible to continue fighting. Lucario turned his head and looked at Aoyagi. If I remember correctly, among Aoyagi's 3 Pokémon, Tyrannosaurus has no combat power now, and Bluebird is too low in level. The strange stone may not have any effect in this non-gym battle. The only ones who have combat power are the seriously injured patient, and the young Bluebird. This situation is very bad. Lucario took a deep breath, activated the power of the wave to try to suppress the injuries on his body, and prepared to fight to the death. At this moment, Aoyagi's voice came over. Didn't you say that your physical strength has reached its limit? Back off, it's my turn next. Lucario looked at Qingliu in surprise, only to see him take out an ordinary Poké Ball. But even such an ordinary ball suddenly emitted bursts of white light. You are not the only one who is prepared. As the button was pressed, a figure shrouded in holy white light appeared in the center of the open space. Chapter 104 Blue Eyes White Dragon. After being hit head-on by zombie Tyrannosaurus's heart explosion move, the meteorite containing Arceus power on its surface has begun to slowly fall off. Not long after entering this jungle, the panel shows that there are only 15 minutes left for the remaining fragmentation. And now, several hours have passed. Crack. As the last small piece of brown meteorite falls off, its true appearance is revealed. A piece of white, crystal clear, oval-shaped legendary white stone with a sacred light everywhere stands in front of Qingliu. As soon as it appears, it instantly illuminates the surrounding area. This is. Lucario was a little surprised when he saw a stone running out of the Poké Ball, but his brows slowly frowned. Judging from the small piece that just fell, the white stone in front of him should be the huge brown stone before, the stone that remained motionless in the face of the attacks of Haoli and Heracris, and was able to directly block the full-strength attack of the skeleton-like terrifying monster. It was surprised that the stone had signs of being shattered at the time, but it never expected that it would show its current new appearance after shattering. Compared to before, the white stone is obviously more agile and more lively now. But, what use can it be? It didn't feel any fluctuations of life from it, and Lucario couldn't help but look at Qingliu. Seeing Qingliu's calm face, it was even more confused. This stone does have a very strong defense, and ordinary people can't break it at all, but as it thought before, this is not a regular alliance battle, but a real field battle. The opponent can't insist on hitting a target that doesn't move instead of attacking the trainer directly. It believes that Qingliu must know this truth, and even said so before. Since you know it, why do you still do this? Lucario Basie must not ride sister. And the opposite side, after hearing Qingliu's words prepared, although the expression on her face did not change, her hands were already on the remaining 2 Poké Balls, ready to fight with all her strength. Especially after seeing that a Pokémon emitting white light and seemingly evolving came out of the opponent's Poké Ball, she raised her vigilance to the highest level. Because this is probably the powerful and dangerous thing that destroyed the Veil Gym. But the following development was somewhat beyond her expectations. This stone did look unusual, but it seemed, except for the fact that it glowed, it was no different from a real stone. To be on the safe side, she deliberately kept a little distance. But as time passed, the stone was still just glowing, without any reaction. Suxing frowned slightly, and she decided to test it. Armored bird, high-speed stars. Duh. The armored bird made a hoarse cry, and as its wings flapped, more than a dozen stars in star form shot towards the legendary white stone. Ding 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 ding. A series of crisp collision sounds rang out, and all the high-speed stars hit accurately, but apart from stirring up a puff of dust, it seemed to cause no damage. Suxing then jumped off the armored bird, and at the same time, a cold and arrogant voice sounded, "Attack with wings." The armored bird's wings lit up with white light, and after a brief hover in the air, it swung its body to dive, and when it passed by, it hit its wings on the white stone. Ling. There was another crisp sound, and the armored bird flew back to the sky after attacking. It really didn't work. Suxing said to himself when he saw that both attacks ended in failure. It was normal for the high-speed star to have no killing power. The armored bird was not good at special attacks, and learned this move for tentative attacks. However, the attack with wings covered with hard armor had no effect, which was enough to prove that the opponent's defense was amazing. However, Judging from its current performance, it has no ability to move. Thinking of this, Suxing decisively launched a verbal offensive. Kid, you don't think I will be cautious if you throw a hard glowing stone at me? You can come and try. Qingliu responded calmly. Seeing that the other party did not accept the challenge, Suxing showed a cruel smile on his face. Little devil, I will give you one last chance. As long as you hand over that thing, I can leave immediately, but if you continue to be stubborn, don't blame me. Facing Suxing's verbal threat, Qingliu laughed disdainfully. I don't think your words are credible, as you have been suppressed by the Alliance and hide in the gutter. If you want something, just come and get it. After that, Qingliu slowly opened his hands and made a gesture of letting the horse come. Seeing this, Suxing's smile disappeared immediately. It seems that you don't want to drink a toast and drink a penalty. Then he raised his hand, pointed at Qingliu and said, Armored Bird, don't hold back, just bypass that stone and knock that little devil down for me. As long as you don't kill him, anything is fine. Crack. The armored bird's eyes were full of ferocity, and its body covered with thin armor began to dive. The wings on both sides lit up, bypassing the legendary white stone and shooting straight at Qingliu. Seeing this, Lucario immediately took a deep breath and tried to support, but was forced back by the telekinesis of the bronze mirror monster that Jupiter had just sent. After dodging, he wanted to stop it again, but it was too late. The swooping armored bird had already approached Qingliu's range. Lucario roared in a low voice, and the wave power on his palm surged to launch a wave missile, but before it could gather, it collapsed directly due to lack of physical strength, and he could not help but pound the ground and roared. Damn it! At this time, the armored bird had already flown the last distance and rushed to Qingliu, with its wings spread out and crashed into Qingliu. Looking at the attack, Qingliu did not move. However, the legendary white stone next to it moved. The entire oval stone rose from the ground in a very strange way, and rushed from the side in a backwards manner, blocking Qingliu in front of it, and facing the armored bird head-on. Bang! Unlike the previous crisp sound, this time the collision caused a dull sound. Armored Bird was also confused by the legendary white stone, which was thought to be motionless, but suddenly appeared. It was caught off guard and had no time to adjust its wings, and was knocked back. It's not that simple. Seeing this scene, Suxing sneered. Seeing Qingliu's indifferent expression in the face of the attack, she guessed that this stone was definitely not as simple as she imagined. But that's all. Bronze Mirror Monster, use telekinesis to control this stone. Armored Bird, use your wings to attack again to get rid of that kid. Bronze Mirror Monster flew up after hearing this, and the psychic energy condensed and began to launch telekinetic moves. The knocked back Armored Bird adjusted its posture and flapped its wings to get ready. Even if your stone has some problems, it's just that. Kid, I gave you a chance, but you didn't cherish it, so don't blame me. Suxing waved his hand, and the two Pokemon moved at the sound. Bronze Mirror Monster's telekinetic move shot straight out and hit the legendary white stone. At the same time, Armored Bird also used its wings to attack again and rushed out. The slower one controlled and interfered, while the faster one was responsible for the main attack. Instantly, they formed an offensive and attacked Qingliu. Even Qingliu had to admit that the cooperation between these two Pokemon was very tacit, and their actions were smooth and flowing. Suxing must have put a lot of effort in it. Facing such an attack, he was in great danger. Even if the legendary Beishi could exert his strength to break free from the influence of the Bronze Mirror Monster's telekinesis, his body, which was not very flexible to begin with, would be seriously affected in speed, and he would not be able to rescue in time. But all of this conjecture was only based on the fact that the legendary Beishi was the legendary Beishi. Qingliu skipped the attack and looked at the legendary Beishi. With a flashing white light, he suddenly felt an inexplicable sense of pride in his heart. Come down, Blue Eyes White Dragon. Qingliu whispered in a low voice, and the legendary Becky, who was originally suppressed by the Bronze Mirror Monster's continuous attack, suddenly lit up with a dazzling light comparable to the light of evolution. Ka. A shell-breaking sound was heard. The sound was very light and crisp, but it was unusually transmitted to the ears of everyone and Pokemon present. The next second, a tiny crack suddenly appeared on the top of the legendary white stone, and endless white light came out of it. Kakakakaka. In an instant, the crack spread to the entire body. Then, the entire legendary white stone seemed to turn into a white hole, and a terrifying pressure descended instantly. Whether it was the bronze mirror monster that was releasing its telekinesis or the armored bird that rushed forward to attack, they all stopped their actions the moment they felt this pressure. The bronze mirror monster cancelled its telekinesis and flew back, and the armored bird waved its wings to attack and return to the sky, with a look of tension. What is going on? Jupiter saw the strangeness of his two Pokémon and immediately opened his eyes wide, looking at the source of their uneasiness. Such a big stone, is it an egg? What kind of Pokémon would be born from such a hard and huge stone full of light? Jupiter searched her mind but could not find the corresponding information. This was beyond her cognition. The same doubts arose in Lucario's mind. However, compared to Jupiter, it had seen the horror of Tyrannosaurus and zombie Tyrannosaurus, so it had a little more guess in its heart. It's a guy of the same level as that monster. Lucario swallowed unconsciously, and was filled with horror. Because just now, as a wave Pokémon, it had already felt that in the legendary White Stone, there appeared a wave that seemed to not exist in this world and was emitting an extremely powerful wave. In Lucario's shocked eyes, the light emitted by the legendary White Stone reached its limit and suddenly shattered. The next second, a giant dragon with a snow-white body, sharp teeth and claws, a pair of huge wings on its back, and a layered tail behind it broke out of the stone. Blue Eyes White Dragon, coming. 3000/10000, go, go, go. Chapter 105. 1v4 Under the Dragon's Might. The Blue Eyes White Dragon, which was over 5 meters tall and catching up with Tyrannosaurus, and whose body length reached over 10 meters, began to flap its wings gently. Then, a strong wind blew, and the blade-like wings on the back of the Blue Eyes White Dragon moved faster and faster. The pure white light became more and more dazzling as it moved, until its figure overlapped with a rising sun in the sky. Roar! A dragon roar that resounded through the heavens and the earth exploded in the air, and the pressure that had disappeared before reappeared and suppressed the ground. The already somewhat uneasy armored bird and mirror monster suddenly felt as if their whole bodies were invisibly shackled, and even flying became laborious. The Lucario next to them was also oppressed indiscriminately, and his breathing became heavy and rapid. But compared to the armored bird and mirror monster, it had a better foundation and stronger strength, so it didn't show that much discomfort in the face of pressure. But at this moment, Lucario was not in the mood to care about his own condition. The moment he saw the Blue Eyes White Dragon, his mind was attracted. Others may not be able to see it, but this pressure and the wave guide on its body have already demonstrated the power of the White Dragon in front of it. Thinking of this, Lucario looked at Qingliu. Is this what you call preparation? It's really too much? Suxing looked at the two Pokémon around him that were obviously not normal, and the Blue Eyes White Dragon hovering above his head, and his expression became solemn and gloomy. She had never seen any Pokémon jump out of a stone, and it was a dragon Pokémon that jumped out. A real dragon. Just looking at its size and appearance, it can be seen that it is not affected by the weakness of being born. Every move is full of aggression, which is completely different from all the dragon Pokémon she has seen before. Is this terrifying feeling a threat characteristic? But how can there be such a strong sense of oppression? Not only are armored bird and mirror monster affected, but even I feel chest tightness. Suxing took a deep breath, suppressed the discomfort in his body, and turned his eyes to Qingliu. Having the ability to raise the Veil Gem to the ground, having the special ability to confirm the location of Pokémon, and now there is a dragon that popped out of a stone one day, there are so many secrets. Thinking of this, Suxing took off the communicator and put it to his mouth. The location coordinates have been sent, hurry up and come. After saying that, he threw it aside without waiting for a response, and looked at Qingliu again, and his cold and arrogant voice sounded, "Little boy, you are more valuable than I thought. Whether it is now or in the future, you will definitely be of great help to our Galaxy team's plan. Do you want to consider joining us? I don't want to work with a menopausal ant like you." Qingliu shook his head and refused. Menopausal ant. Suxing couldn't help but jump twice when he heard this. It seems that you are really tired of living. Don't think that you can really kill with a dragon Pokémon. Come out, Zubat. A flash of red light passed, and a blue Zubat appeared. At the same time, the bushes not far away shook, and a skunk covered with long hair jumped out of it and jumped in front of Suxing. It was the tank skunk used to attract Qingliu's exploration function. 4 Pokémon gathered around Suxing at the same time, all staring fiercely at Qingliu and the Blue Eyes White Dragon hovering above the open space. Even the most powerful Pokémon have limited strength when they are just born, Not to mention that you are a dragon type. Suxing commanded the attack without stopping. Bronze Mirror Monster, Strange Light, Zubat uses Air Blade, Armor Bird High Speed Star, Tank Skunk Venom Shock. Dark Purple Ghost Energy, Blue White Flying Energy, Gray General Energy, Purple Poison Energy. 4 energies were launched at the same time, and after merging together, they rushed towards the Blue Eyes White Dragon in the air. Facing the attack, before Qingliu could say anything, the Blue Eyes White Dragon had already demonstrated its amazing speed, easily dodging the attack with the flapping of its wings, and at the same time rushing straight down to the ground. Scatter quickly. Seeing this, Suxing quickly issued an order. The 4 Pokémon quickly moved their feet, trying to leave the attack area. Roar. At this time, the Blue Eyes White Dragon opened its mouth, and a terrifying roar mixed with a heavy sense of oppression fell. The 4 Pokémon that had just started to move suddenly felt that their bodies were affected, becoming extremely heavy, and their movement speed also dropped sharply. Seeing this, Suxing had to shout loudly, "All use guard." 4 green lights lit up one after another, turning into 4 semicircular shields to protect them. The next second, the Blue Eyes White Dragon dived to the ground. Boom! The huge white dragon claws stomped heavily on the ground, accompanied by a dull crash, and an invisible sound wave swept around, blowing the guards of the 4 Pokémon to the point of collapse. Then, before they could react, the Blue Eyes White Dragon turned its body on the spot, and its strong and long tail swept across, knocking them all away. This guy. Suxing looked at the blue eyes of the Blue Eyes White Dragon in the smoke, and the light that made her heart palpitate. This dragon was completely different from the Dragon-type Pokémon she had in mind. This level of combat power was not what a newly hatched Pokémon should have. This mysterious dragon created by this mysterious kid. What on earth is going on? Standing not far away, looking at the Blue Eyes White Dragon that suppressed 4 Pokémon for a while, Qingliu clicked on its illustrated information. Race, Blue Eyes White Dragon. Classification, White Dragon Pokémon. Attributes, Dragon. General, features, Dragon's Might. As a legendary dragon, it is naturally endowed with the majesty of the Dragon King. All Pokémon will have their stats reduced in all directions when facing it. Level 20. Exclusive move, Explosive Wind Bullet. Dragon type 80. Power increases with level increase. Mastered moves, none. Race value, 450. Horsepower 70. Attack 90. Defense 60. Special attack 85. Special defense 50. Speed 95. Intimacy, 20. It has a certain good impression of you who summoned it. Status, normal. Information summary, a proud and legendary dragon known for its powerful attack power. Any opponent will be crushed by it, and its destructive power is immeasurable. The race value, this enhanced version of the intimidation feature, and the panel attributes are much stronger than Agumon. Qingliu looked at the blue small words in front of him and thought. But overall it is still normal. After all, the real strength of Agumon lies in the number of evolutions and the qualitative leap brought about by so many evolutions. The Blue Eyes White Dragon is a pure legendary dragon. Although we don't know what the subsequent evolutionary stages will be like, if it can evolve to one of the 2 dragons at the top, its combat power will surely be amazing. In addition, there is only one thing that really surprised Qingliu, and that is the level of Blue Eyes White Dragon. Unlike Agumon, which was level 12 when he came, and Blue Cotton Bird was not level 5 when he was born, but level 20, which is obviously not a level that should be at birth. Is it because I participated in several battles in the legendary Whitestone stage and got experience? Qingliu thought to himself. But it's good this way, so that you can have enough basic combat power to give full play to your strength. Looking at the 4 Pokémon of Jupiter who have stood up again in all directions, Qingliu said loudly, Blue Eyes White Dragon, show your strength, use Exploding Wind Bullet. And don't rush. In addition, the chapter name is wrong and cannot be changed. Embarrassing. Chapter 106 Exploding Wind Bomb. Hearing the voice, the Blue Eyes White Dragon turned its head, took a deep look at Qingliu, and then locked its eyes on the bronze mirror monster in front of it, then raised its head and opened its bloody mouth with rows of sharp fangs. The next second, all the light on the Blue Eyes White Dragon began to gather in its open mouth, and finally condensed and compressed into an energy bomb. I saw strands of continuously beating electric currents shuttle and jump in the energy bomb, and the white light became more pure and dazzling with the compression, and a terrifying breath was born from it. This is equivalent to Tyrannosaurus Super Flame and Super Blast, and it belongs to the Blue Eyes White Dragon's own exclusive move, Exploding Gale Bomb. Qingliu opened the big move without any hesitation. He wanted to find out directly what the power of the Blue Eyes White Dragon's moves could reach when he was behind in level. Thinking of this, Qingliu's eyes quickly swept over the 4 Pokémon of Jupiter, and the illustrated information appeared in front of him. Race: Bronze Mirror Armored Bird Golbat Tank Skunk. Classification: Bronze Pokémon Armored Bird Pokémon Bat Pokémon Skunk Pokémon. Attributes: Steel, Psychic Flying, Steel Poison, Flying Poison, Poison. Features: Heavy Metal Sharp Eye Psychic Stink. Level: 2-4, 2-5, 2-6, 3-0. Exclusive moves: None. Mastered moves: XXXXXXX. Race value: 300, 465, 455, 479. Intimacy: -1, -10, -1, -20. Status: Normal. Suppressed by external forces. Status and combat effectiveness have declined slightly. X4. Information summary: XXXXXXXX except for the core tank skunk. The other 3 are almost all around level 25. Perfect experimental targets. Don't let me down. Blue Eyes White Dragon, Explosive Wind Bullet. Fire. The lightning wrapped around the exploding wind bomb began to jump violently, bringing powerful kinetic energy and acceleration, and flew out instantly with the Blue Eyes White Dragon's ejection action. Feeling this unique momentum, Suxing immediately realized that this was not an ordinary attack, and quickly said, "Bronze Mirror Monster, use supernatural power." As soon as the voice fell, the Bronze Mirror Monster quickly mobilized the supernatural power energy, condensed the moves and launched a counterattack. But compared to the Blue Eyes White Dragon, its speed was much slower, especially since it was still within the range of the characteristic dragon power, and its movements became slower and slower. At the same time as the Bronze Mirror Monster's moves were just launched, the exploding wind bomb had already set off a gust of wind, and in an instant it crossed a distance of 20 to 30 meters and rushed in front of it. The next second, it brazenly hit the supernatural power. Chi chi chi. Just at the moment of contact, the lightning began to flash wildly, reflecting the radiant light, easily dispersing the supernatural power, and then directly hit the Bronze Mirror Monster in the stunned expression. Bang! A dull sound rang out, and the Bronze Mirror Monster was knocked away dozens of meters and fell into a cluster of bushes. When it appeared again, it was already wounded and panting. Looking at the state of the Bronze Mirror Monster, Qingliu whispered to himself, "It seems that even if there is a difference of several levels, it can still deal a lot of damage with one shot. If Tyrannosaurus in normal state fights across levels, it should be able to easily defeat a Pokémon about 5 levels higher than itself." And the range of Blue Eyes White Dragon's current damage range with a blessing of its characteristics is also about 5 levels, and Qingliu can accept the current result. The key point is that the introduction of this move mentioned that it is similar to the setting that Tyrannosaurus will upgrade every time it evolves, that is, the power increases with a level increase. A move with great potential has such a powerful power at the initial stage, what is there to be dissatisfied with? Then, Qingliu continued, "Blue Eyes White Dragon, use another exploding wind bullet to finish it off." The Blue Eyes White Dragon's wings suddenly opened, and it was about to start charging. Suxing's angry voice came, "You wish." Compared to Qingliu's satisfaction, Suxing was very angry at the moment. Originally, she thought that no matter how strong it was just a newly born Dragon-type Pokémon after all, and its combat power was limited. Based on this situation, she even put all her Pokémon on the siege for the sake of insurance. Unexpectedly, the siege failed, but one of them was seriously injured by a single move when the opportunity was seized. In addition to this powerful combat power, there is also this characteristic that exists all the time. If it were a normal battle, even if the Blue Eyes White Dragon was stronger than the challenger of the same period, it would not be so easy to overcome. With this enhanced intimidation, her Pokémon would be restricted a lot. But the more it is now, the more it cannot stop, otherwise if it is seized, the action will be declared a failure if it is defeated one by one. In the current situation, she no longer seeks to defeat Qingliu, but only needs to avoid losing and delay enough time to wait for the reinforcements sent by the headquarters. Suxing immediately issued an order, and saw that the armored bird, Zubat and Tank Skunk beside him had already launched an offensive while the Blue Eyes White Dragon paused. Zubat continuously sprayed shadow balls, the armored bird attacked from the air, and the Tank Skunk started to rush from the ground, and the three of them formed a three-way trap from top, middle and bottom. Fly to the sky and rush towards that bat. Hearing Qingliu's order, the blue-eyes white dragon flapped its wings and took off, ignoring the limited range of the tank skunk attacking on the ground. However, the oncoming armored bird used lightweight body to reduce its weight during flight, and its speed soared and rushed over first. Ling. The wing attack hit the blue-eyes white dragon, knocking it off balance. Although it was just a knockback, the damage was not great, but being hit by such a guy, blue-eyes white dragon's blue eyes revealed a monstrous anger. Even Qingliu, who was at a distance, could feel it. Being hit by such a simple attack by such a fellow was a shame. Roar. Blue-eyes white dragon roared angrily, and the dragon's might covered the entire field. After dodging several shadow balls from Zubat in a row, it flapped its wings violently to speed up and chase after Armorbird. This sudden burst of speed shocked Armorbird, and it quickly flapped its wings to get rid of Blue-eyes white dragon. However, under the influence of the characteristic dragon's might, plus the speed value of Blue-eyes white dragon, even if Armorbird was several levels ahead, Blue-eyes white dragon still came from behind and rushed to the side of Armorbird and walked side by side. Then, light and lightning merged in the mouth of Blue-eyes white dragon, and the explosive wind bomb reappeared. Seeing that it could not dodge, Jupiter immediately let Armorbird fight head-on, surrounded by general energy, raised its wings high, and chopped down Blue-eyes white dragon from top to bottom. The second explosive wind bomb responded to it. The energy bomb was fired, splitting and slashing down. Chi. Bang bang bang. The split slashed directly on the explosive wind bomb. The stimulation of this breakthrough caused the already violent lightning on the energy bomb to go completely crazy, and finally a violent explosion occurred. The armored bird, which had lost weight suddenly, was directly blown away by the air wave for hundreds of meters, and its figure quickly disappeared from sight. The blue-eyes white dragon, on the other hand, absorbed the aftermath of the explosion in a short distance with its huge body and wings, and stopped its retreat when it was about to get close to the ground. There are two left. Qingliu's voice had just fallen. Suddenly, a breeze blew, and Zubat appeared behind the blue-eyes white dragon, revealing its sharp teeth and biting down on its neck. The tank skunk on the ground also launched an attack at this time, with brown energy surrounding its body, and jumped from the ground to attack at an incredibly fast speed. Evil move, surprise attack. I haven't fallen yet. Chapter 107, The Pride of the Blue-eyes White Dragon, 2-in-1. In a flash, the blue glowing eyes of the blue-eyes white dragon turned left and right, and then chose to give up fighting against Zubat, raised its arms, raised three white claws and slapped Tank Skunk directly. Boom. Pure brute force versus surging evil energy. Tank Skunk was stunned by this terrifying force. But level 30 is still level 30, and its strong physical fitness allowed it to withstand this blow. It launched another surprise attack and directly hit the blue-eyes white dragon. Bang! A sound of energy collision sounded, and the blue-eyes white dragon was knocked back. Good job. Seeing this scene, Jupiter showed a happy expression on his face and continued to command, Zubat, use poisonous fangs. Zubat, who was about to succeed in the sneak attack, was like a maggot on the tarsal bone. It followed behind the blue-eyes white dragon with its wings flapping, its body slightly curled up and its big mouth closed. Four sharp teeth wrapped in purple poisonous energy bit the blue-eyes white dragon's neck. Seeing that Zubat's attack also hit, Suxing felt a sense of victory again. Humph, no matter how strong and unique it is, there is still an absolute gap in level between it and Tank Skunk. This may be a turning point. Zubat, use blood-sucking. As Suxing's voice fell, the light green energy of the insect system surged wildly in Zubat's mouth, and the four teeth bit hard. Snap! A crisp but harsh sound rang out, followed by three sharp teeth falling. Zubat's expression became dull at this moment, and Suxing's face changed suddenly. At this time, in Zubat's mouth, only the one in the upper right corner of the four fangs was left, and the rest all fell from the air. The place where the blue-eyes white dragon was bitten by it was covered with fine dragon scales, and the previous attack did not even leave a red dot. How can it be so hard? Suxing muttered to himself in disbelief. Even Aoyagi couldn't help but be surprised. Even if the actual combat power of Blue-eyes White Dragon is higher than that of Pokémon above level 25, it does not mean that it can block the attack of Pokémon 10 levels higher than it without injury. After all, even Tyrannosaurus Rex other parts except the shell covering its head can't do it. Unless it is like in the legendary White Stone period, There is a layer of meteorite that forms an invisible protective shell. Qingliu couldn't help but guess. Suxing didn't know all this, but she also knew that now was not the time to think about it. If blood-sucking didn't work, then she would just distance herself and reorganize the long-range attack. But what Suxing didn't expect was the current state of the blue-eyes white dragon. Although Zubat's attack did not cause any actual damage, it strongly stimulated the blue-eyes white dragon. As a proud and noble dragon, these cats and dogs not only opposed it, but also dared to offend the dragon body repeatedly. The blue-eyes white dragon was angry. It was really angry. The anger in its blue eyes burned fiercely, and regardless of whether it would be injured or not, it directly slapped the place on its neck where Zubat had just attacked with a claw, forcing it to retreat. Then its body directly rotated backwards in the air, and its claws were raised high, and it grabbed backwards fiercely along with the movement of its body. Zubat, whose teeth had just been broken a second ago, had no time to dodge at all, and could only put up a green protective shield in a hurry. Almost the next moment after Zubat used the guard, the claws of Blue Eyes White Dragon arrived. One claw slapped the protective shield from bottom to top, shattering the guard move, and the terrifying force directly knocked it into the air. Before Zubat could recover, Blue Eyes White Dragon had already rushed into the air, opened its mouth in a condescending manner, and fired a burst of wind bombs, hitting Zubat. Bang! With an explosion, Zubat was shot down from the air by Blue Eyes White Dragon, turned into a stream of light and smashed into the ground, stirring up a cloud of dust. In the dust, there was no movement for a long time. Roar! After dealing with Zubat who offended him, Blue Eyes White Dragon looked up to the sky and roared, the roar mixed with dragon power, sweeping around. The third one. After confirming that Zubat had lost its combat effectiveness, Qingliu looked at the tank skunk next to Jupiter and said slowly, "There's only one left." Suxing's face suddenly turned gloomy. Winning the fight would be fine, but counting down here is simply taking advantage of the situation. Although the conflict cannot be resolved, Qingliu's look really made Suxing feel extremely angry. But then she seemed to have thought of something, and she took 2 deep breaths, and her originally gloomy face gradually relaxed. Suxing picked up the Poké Ball, put the 3 Pokémon back into the ball, looked at Qingliu and said, "Kid, I admit that your Pokémon is indeed stronger, but don't be too arrogant. The real battle has just begun. Tank Skunk, use smoke." The tank skunk standing next to him took a deep breath and spit out cloud after cloud of gray-black smoke that covered the surroundings. Qingliu frowned slightly and said, "Use your wings to blow these things back." The white wings flapped quickly, and under the influence of its huge body, the smoke was affected by the gradually fanning wind and all retreated backwards. At this moment, a group of poisonous fog filled with rich purple suddenly attacked from another direction, heading straight for the Blue Eyes White Dragon. Moreover, this direction happened to be where Qingliu was. If the Blue Eyes White Dragon wanted to hide, the poisonous fog would blow onto Qingliu. Seeing this, the Blue Eyes White Dragon condensed the explosive Gale Bomb, and prepared to try to break through by force. But before the energy could condense, the tank skunk used the cover of the smoke to run to the opposite direction of what it had just done. Continuously use sludge bombs. Jupiter's command was conveyed, and a bunch of sludge, which was composed of sticky purple liquid and was obviously poisonous, was shot out. Not only that, these sludge bombs had almost the same attack trajectory as the turbid mist just now, and they all went straight to the Blue Eyes White Dragon and Qingliu at the same time. Facing 3 attacks at the same time, the best way is for one person and one dragon to run at the same time, leaving a safe distance, and Qingliu thought so. But before he could say anything, the Blue Eyes White Dragon had already landed in front of him, and its wide wings spread out to protect Qingliu behind it, and it opened its mouth again. Zzz. Electric current surged in the light, and an explosive gust of wind quickly took shape, but this was not over yet. After condensing, the Blue Eyes White Dragon had no intention of stopping. Soon, the second explosive gust of wind slowly appeared. Want to use 2 at the same time. This made Qingliu worry whether the current Blue Eyes White Dragon could hold on. Unlike the setting that Agumon can fight endlessly after eating, the elves in the world of Yu-Gi-Oh need to communicate with their partners to fight. But this is the Pokemon world, there is no link, and there was a continuous battle just now. The explosive wind bullet has been used 3 times. Qingliu was unsure about the physical strength of Blue Eyes White Dragon. A thought flashed through Qingliu's mind, and before he could make a decision, a blue energy suddenly appeared, and all the smoke, fog, and mud bombs flying towards Blue Eyes White Dragon and Qingliu were like being slowed down, and the speed dropped sharply. Is this the power of the wave? Qingliu turned his head and looked at Lucario, who had been silent on the side. Lucario was raising his arms to control the power of the wave. The wave transmitted with rapid breathing, "I can't hold on for much longer, you two, hurry up." Qingliu took action immediately, but Blue Eyes White Dragon did not intend to move. Until Qingliu left a little distance, its sharp blue eyes turned to Lucario, and a heavy breath of white air came out of its fanged mouth. "Hurry. I can't hold on any longer." Lucario's body began to tremble slightly, but the Blue Eyes White Dragon remained indifferent until the wave power failed and all the attacks were directed at the Blue Eyes White Dragon. Then it began to move. The light was interspersed with strands of electricity, condensing into explosive wind bullets and shooting at the incoming attacks. Boom! The energy collided, a roar sounded, and a strong wind swept around. Thick black smoke instantly enveloped the figures of Tank Skunk and Blue Eyes White Dragon. Soon, the Blue Eyes White Dragon came out from the smoke again. Behind it, a series of sludge bombs followed closely. The Blue Eyes White Dragon glanced back and dodged while turning and moving. Just now, why didn't that guy dodge? Lucario took a breath and looked at Qingliu and asked, if he had dodged, it wouldn't be like this now, and the look he gave me just now, I even suspect that he can't tell friend from foe. Qingliu quietly looked at the Blue Eyes White Dragon flying in the air and fighting with Tank Skunk in a long-range attack, and said, maybe it's because of its inner pride that it doesn't want you to intervene in the battle. Pride. Lucario was a little confused. What kind of pride is needed in a field battle? Qingliu didn't continue to answer. In the previous battle, Qingliu noticed that the two attacks of Armored Bird and Zubat made Blue Eyes White Dragon very angry, but it didn't show such emotions to Tank Skunk, the strongest Pokemon of Jupiter. Combined with the arrogant legendary dragon written in the panel detection illustration information, and the King's Majesty mentioned in the characteristic dragon power, it can be guessed that this is probably a dragon with pride and pride in its heart. But it's normal to think about it. She was chosen by Cabecito as his wife, and she broke free from the control of the Dark High Priest with this arrogance, forced her way into her inner world to enforce justice, and killed the legendary dragon who held Cabecito hostage. How could she not have a temper? Thinking of this, Qingliu liked Blue Eyes White Dragon more and more. But now its weakness is also very obvious. At this time, the Blue Eyes White Dragon flying in the air sprayed out a bursting gust of wind bullet with all its strength. Facing the attack, Tank Skunk's whole body was filled with evil aura, and the evil wave counterattacked, and neither side could do anything to the other. Sure enough, it will evolve like this. Previously, relying on the terrifying suppression power of the characteristic dragon power, it caught Jupiter off guard, and then relied on the power of the bursting gust of wind bullet and the opponent's lack of understanding of Blue Eyes White Dragon to defeat her 3 Pokemon in a row. But now, like Tyrannosaurus, Blue Eyes White Dragon has a single attack method. When the opponent is obviously used to this kind of suppression, facing the situation that the level has reached 35, which is beyond the range of being killed in one blow, and Tank Skunk frequently uses flexible and changeable moves to pull, the situation is deadlocked. Blue Eyes White Dragon can't end the battle, and the opponent can't do anything to Blue Eyes White Dragon. In the end, it will only turn into a tug-of-war. Just born, the combat power is always limited. Qingliu looked past the two who were understanding the fight and looked at Suxing standing opposite. The opponent probably has also noticed this, but he didn't have any impatient intentions. He patiently commanded Tank Skunk to use moves to engage, and if it didn't work, he would fight against Blue Eyes White Dragon. Looking slowly, Qingliu found something wrong. Suxing didn't seem to be anxious at all. Logically speaking, in this situation, she should look for opportunities to attack with all her strength. After all, the original goal was to come for me, but now not only does she not have the intention to attack me, but she also doesn't show any intention to win. Qingliu fell into deep thought. Could it be? Qingliu immediately opened the panel and scanned the surroundings with a Pokemon encyclopedia. However, the information level of the Pokemon that appeared was very low, basically belonging to the kind at the bottom of the food chain that few people captured. Apart from that, there were no other abnormal Pokemon. No. Thinking of what Jupiter had guessed before, he took out a handful of energy cubes from his backpack and handed them to Lucario. Eat them all, and then use your wave guide to expand the search range in that direction as much as possible. Qingliu pointed to Vale City and said. Lucario quickly understood Qingliu's inner thoughts, took the energy cube and put it in his mouth, then half knelt and supported the ground with one hand. The appendage behind the ear floated up, and an invisible blue wave guide force quickly shot towards the direction of Vale City with Lucario as the starting point. 1 meter, 10 meters, 100 meters, 500 meters, 1,000 meters, 1,500 meters. As the distance got farther and farther, Lucario's face became visibly worse, and even his body began to tremble violently. "How is it?" Qingliu asked. "At present, no." Lucario replied tremblingly. Qingliu fell into deep thought. The panel could not detect any Pokémon approaching, and Lucario's wave guide could not find any signs of human approaching. So was he overthinking? No, that was not right. Qingliu looked at the expression on Suxing's face, narrowed his eyes, and said to Lucario, "Try to increase the distance a little bit." Okay. Lucario swallowed all the energy cubes with great effort, and the wave guide power in his body surged again. The search range soon exceeded 2,000 meters and reached 2,005, and then sprinted towards 3,000 meters. At this moment, in the wave guide world with only black and white, Lucario saw some shadows. The propellers of no less than 5 helicopters were spinning rapidly, and all the people on them were fully armed. 2 people, a man and a woman, who were obviously more exquisitely dressed and had stern faces, sat in front of the door of the helicopter in the middle, and were heading towards where they were. Lucario immediately retracted the wave guide power that had reached its limit, and tremblingly told Qingliu everything he saw. Qingliu couldn't help but sneer when he heard this. "I didn't expect that the Galaxy team, the strongest underground organization in the Sinnoh region, would send all its cotters just for me. They really think highly of me." Chapter 108. He runs away, he chases, he can fly with wings. Qingliu then whispered to Lucario, "Hurry up and digest the energy cubes you just ate, and then accumulate physical strength. I need you to prepare a wave missile." "What are you going to do?" Lucario raised his head and looked at Qingliu. "What else can I do? The enemy is strong and I am weak. Of course, I will just run away, but..." Qingliu looked at Suxing, who had some doubts and anxiety on his face after seeing Lucario use the power of wave guide, and said, "But before leaving, we must let them know that this matter is not so easy to end." According to Lucario's description, the people who came were not ordinary members of the Galaxy team. The man and woman should be 2 of the 3 cotters of the Galaxy team besides Suxing, Zhengxing and Huoxing. If I remember correctly, Huoxing's strength is almost the same as Suxing, and Zhengxing's strength is above Huoxing and Suxing, and he seems to be the leader of the cotters. His face art master Poison Skullfrog left a very deep impression on Qingliu. Now that Tyrannosaurus was injured and unable to fight, it would be very difficult for him to deal with Jupiter alone. If Zhengxing and Huoxing were added, it would be very likely to be worse. Therefore, he had to retreat. But before retreating, he had to teach them a lesson. Qingliu then looked at the blue-eyes white dragon who was fighting with Tank Skunk, and quickly said, "Use your tail to open it, fly up to the sky and use the explosion gale bullet." The blue-eyes white dragon flapped its wings violently, stirring up a gust of wind while its body turned 360 degrees on the spot, and its thick and layered tail was driven to whip towards Tank Skunk. Snap! The whipping with terrifying force landed directly on Tank Skunk, slamming it heavily to the ground. Zzz. A explosion gale bullet that reflected light and jumped with electric current was compressed and formed, and the blue-eyes white dragon violently sprayed it at the opposite Tank Skunk. Tank Skunk, use Sludge Bomb. The thin-skinned and strong stamina Tank Skunk quickly recovered from the dizziness and quickly stood up. A series of purple sludge bombs gathered in front of him and shot into the air. Bang! Energy exploded, smoke and dust rose up. The next second, Tank Skunk started to run, climbed up the trees next to him, and finally rushed into the air. Tank Skunk, poison attack. Jupiter's voice sounded, and Tank Skunk, which jumped into the air, raised its front paws. A strong purple energy lit up and stabbed directly at the position where the blue-eyes white dragon had just been. But as his arm passed through the smoke and dust, the poison attack missed. No. Jupiter looked up in the sky. If this flying Pokémon were to use its advantages properly, it would definitely fly upwards. But as she raised her head, she found that there was no trace of the blue-eyes white dragon in the air. Not up there? Then where is it? Here. Qingliu's voice sounded, and Suxing looked over quickly. He saw that blue-eyes white dragon had given up flying and stood in front of Qingliu, with a shining energy bomb in his mouth ready. Blue Eyes White Dragon, fire. As Qingliu swung his arm, the explosive wind bomb shot towards Tank Skunk. Seeing this, Suxing hurriedly said, use the mud bomb to block it. The two energies collided and exploded again, and Suxing breathed a sigh of relief, but a trace of doubt rose in his heart. This kid can obviously sneak attack, why do you have to remind me? Before he finished speaking, an energy bomb mixed with a sound of electricity hit again. The second explosive wind bomb. Tank Skunk quickly sprinted to the side to dodge. Boom. The explosive wind bomb fell directly on the place where it had just stood, and directly blasted a hole in the ground. Before Suxing and Tank Skunk could breathe a sigh of relief, the familiar sound of electricity came again. The third explosive wind bomb. Moreover, compared with the previous two shots, this one was faster and more cunning. It was almost impossible to determine its position until it was close to it. In this situation, Tank Skunk had no time to dodge. By the time he reacted, the explosive wind bullet had already hit him. His body was instantly blown away by the energy of the explosion, plowing a deep gully on the ground. Tank Skunk. Suxing's voice was full of shock. It was 3 shots in a row. The power of this move has been tested 3 times. It is definitely not a move that can be used casually. Such continuous use will definitely consume a lot of physical strength. What did the little ghost want to do suddenly? Exclamation mark. Did he really find reinforcements? Suxing couldn't help but shift his gaze. Qingliu was standing there alone, his expression was calm. The Blue Eyes White Dragon stood in front of him, breathing very heavily. It can be seen that such continuous attacks also consumed a lot of it. But even so, it did not lock in the victory. It was irrational to attack so desperately for a short period of time. After all, the little ghost was still a little ghost. Suxing raised a disdainful smile at the corner of his mouth. Suddenly, she seemed to remember something and immediately looked around. Wait? One person? Where's Lucario? Suxing turned her body sideways and saw Lucario's clasped hands not far away suddenly pushed out, and a blue wave missile flew straight towards her. Seeing this, Tank Skunk on the side tried to go back to help, but because he had been pulled too far away to avoid the attacks of Blue Eyes White Dragon the previous 2 times, even if he used the move, it was too late. Looking at the incoming wave missile, Suxing finally understood the purpose of Qingliu's 3 consecutive shots at the cost of a lot of physical strength. Little devil. Suxing looked at the wave missile that was already very close. He threw himself to the side with all his strength. Bang! The explosion sounded, and the shock wave of the wave missile explosion directly sent Suxing flying and fell into the bushes on the side. Tank Skunk, who had regained his ability to move, saw this and immediately rushed over anxiously. Taking advantage of this gap, Qingliu took Lucario back to the Poké Ball, then threw a few intermediate energy cubes to the Blue Eyes White Dragon and climbed on its back. When the Blue Eyes White Dragon saw the flying object, it opened its mouth and swallowed it in one gulp. The light in its blue eyes suddenly lit up, and it looked back at Qingliu with interest. Its aura also showed signs of gradually recovering. This thing has a good effect on physical recovery. Okay, it's time to go. Fly southeast. Upon hearing this, the Blue Eyes White Dragon glanced at the smoke rising not far away and said nothing. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Feeling the wings of the Blue Eyes White Dragon flapping, the sound of the wind in his ears became louder and louder, and then his body tilted slightly, and everything in front of him moved faster and faster, and finally all were thrown behind him. When everything disappeared and only the sound of the wind remained, he and the Blue Eyes White Dragon had already arrived in the sky, and the strong wind mixed with a hint of the coolness of the morning whistled in front of him and in his ears. This was the first time that Qingliu experienced the flying speed of the Blue Eyes White Dragon, the first time he flew in the air in such a natural way, and the first time he realized his dream of flying in the sky. With this comfort, Qingliu forgot about other things for a while, and felt that his heart was relaxed at this moment. After getting familiar with the feeling of the wind blowing on his body, Qingliu slightly crouched and sat up cross-legged, his eyes slowly looking at the distant sky. At this moment, there were only 2 things in his mind: emptiness. The whole sky was like a world without boundaries, and he was traveling around on the fish of the Blue Eyes White Dragon. Especially when he saw the scenery in the distance that had just broken through the clouds and was covered with red morning glow, this feeling became clearer and calmed his restless heart. Until, a faint mechanical sound came from the distance behind him. Qingliu turned around and saw 5 black helicopters, and the sound just now was the sound of the aircraft propeller turning. Team Galaxy is chasing. There will be another update before 12 o'clock. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 109, Giratina Hometown. This is faster than I thought. Not only was the speed fast, but these guys didn't seem to worry about Jupiter at all, which surprised Qingliu a little. It seemed that in their hearts, he was more important than Jupiter. After simply estimating the distance between them, Qingliu crawled on the back of Blue Eyes White Dragon. Blue Eyes White Dragon, stop playing around, go full speed ahead, it will be troublesome if those guys behind catch up. Upon hearing this, Blue Eyes White Dragon turned his head to look at the helicopter behind him, whose silhouette was not particularly clear, with an inexplicable light flashing in his eyes. Qingliu saw the fighting spirit in its eyes. Compared to saying that the other party was strong, it wanted to test the other party's level in person. That arrogance made it want to fight even when facing a stronger enemy. Qingliu was very pleased. This could be regarded as taking another branch that was not much different from Agumon's bravery and fearlessness. But now he didn't have time, and Blue Eyes White Dragon didn't have the ability. Compared to you, I know their strength better. It's good to have pride and arrogance in your heart, but if you go to die because of this, it's not called pride, it's called stupidity. I think you should understand. The Blue Eyes White Dragon pondered for a moment after hearing this, and turned back. Gradually, the aura of the Blue Eyes White Dragon gradually condensed, the frequency of the wings flapping increased, the things on the ground turned into blurred after images, and the sound of the wind in the ears was completely crazy. The Blue Eyes White Dragon accelerated. This sudden surge in speed was so fast that Qingliu had to completely give up the action of sitting under its special protection, and pressed his whole body against a Blue Eyes White Dragon, holding his back with his hands to ensure that he would not fall off. It was also because of this speed that the figure of the Galaxy team behind him gradually shrank, and finally no shadow could be seen. Captain Zhangxing, what should we do now? You have enough time to ask me, and you have enough time to fly forward a little further. Chase with all your strength. Zhangxing, who has short blue hair, glanced at him lightly. Hearing this, the member of the Galaxy team who had asked the question swallowed his saliva and stood up straight. Yes, we'll go right away. Feeling that the helicopter began to catch up at full speed, Zhangxing looked at the horizon where Qingliu and Blue Eyes White Dragon disappeared in the distance, and his expression became solemn. After just going through a big battle, he still has the physical strength to maintain such a high-speed flight. It seems that what Zhangxing said is true. That kid has a secret that can help the Galaxy team a lot. When Zhangxing, who had short orange shoulder-length hair and wore a Galaxy team uniform skirt and crossed his chest, heard this, he immediately laughed. I don't know if it can help, but Zhangxing is really a waste. It's okay that he can't beat such a kid, but he even let him run away. Ho ha ho ha. The voice was full of gloating, but the people present at the moment did not dare to express anything. They all sat upright and did their own work, as if they didn't hear it. Only Zhangxing looked at her calmly and said, even if you and Zhangxing don't get along, you shouldn't have such emotions when performing the mission, because this may lead to the failure of the mission or be exposed to the Alliance's vision, and ultimately cause irreparable losses to the entire Galaxy team, and the leader of the Red Sun will also be implicated and affected. Hearing Zhangxing's words, Huoxing's originally playful expression suddenly restrained, and after mentioning the name Red Sun, Huoxing's eyes were filled with a faint obsession. Don't worry, for the leader of the Red Sun, I am willing to give everything, even if it means that I have to stay with Zhangxing, that waste, all day long. I can do it. Huoxing's obsession became stronger and stronger. Seeing this, Zhangxing no longer paid attention to her, and his fingers gently flicked the communicator beside his ear. After a short electric sound, a voice suddenly came from the communicator. Report to Captain Zhangxing. Captain Zhangxing's arm was seriously injured, but there is nothing else wrong. After she wakes up, immediately compile all the information about the boy and give it to me. A noisy sound came from the communicator. Zhangxing realized that someone was fighting for the noise made by the communicator, and he turned his head slightly to avoid it. Soon, Zhangxing's gnashing voice sounded, No, I haven't fainted yet, Zhangxing, send me a plane immediately, I want to chase after that sneak-attacking kid and tear it to pieces. Okay. 2 hours later. Qingliu looked at the blue eyes white dragon who is close at hand, and the panel illustration function quickly scanned it. Status: exhausted, gradually entering a weak state. Blue eyes white dragon, slow down a little bit. In the past 2 hours, Blue eyes white dragon has been flying at high speed for almost half of the time. This is undoubtedly a very heavy burden for the blue eyes white dragon, who was just born and had gone through a continuous battle. Even with energy cubes and a large milk to replenish his energy, the blue eyes white dragon's fatigue level continued to increase. This was caused by both the spirit and the body, and external objects could only alleviate it but not cure it. As for Qingliu's words, the blue eyes white dragon seemed not to have heard it and continued to fly at a high speed. Although it had temporarily put down its arrogance in the dispute under his persuasion, this arrogance did not disappear, but was transferred to the present, to compete with itself. Qingliu could not help but say, if you force yourself too much, it will be easy to have an accident later. Before he finished speaking, the blue eyes white dragon felt a sharp pain in its wings, and the flapping movement and frequency stagnated. The body stumbled and fell in the air. Fortunately, the blue eyes white dragon reacted quickly, immediately folded the other wing, dived down a short distance, and flew again with the help of the rising air current. Its speed also slowed down. Qingliu, who was frightened and sweating, let out a long breath and shook his head helplessly. In fact, it's not the blue eyes white dragon's fault for being so stubborn. It's because only by flying at a high speed can they distance themselves from the galaxy team. Once they slow down, they will follow behind them like dung beetles smelling shit. This made Qingliu a little irritated. Because the current situation has returned to the beginning, a dead cycle of physical strength and mechanical endurance. If I had known it would develop like this, I should have decisively attracted the zombie Tyrannosaurus to launch a heart explosion at the Galaxy Curtain building, so that it would be over once and for all. Qingliu sat cross-legged on the back of the blue eyes white dragon, thinking about how to deal with this situation next. At least the previous ambush and attack on the plane will not work. The two cotters on the helicopter are not just eating and drinking. So, now we can only hide in that place. Qingliu fell into deep thought. At this time, the sound of the propeller turning, which will appear soon after the blue eyes white dragon slows down, came again from the distance behind him. And this time, the opponent seemed to be full of strength, and the speed of approaching was faster than every time before. Qingliu frowned, and the blue eyes white dragon also spread its wings. At this time, a voice suddenly reached Qingliu's ears. There seems to be something very unusual ahead. Maybe there will be a way to get rid of these guys there. Qingliu took out Lucario's Poké Ball and asked, "What do you mean?" "I don't know, but there is a very powerful waveguide entrenched in front, so powerful that even I can sense its waveguide in the Poké Ball." Lucario's voice through the waveguide sounded again. "Is there a powerful trainer or Pokemon in that position? The strange thing is here, I can't feel its life breath, but it has a waveguide." This made Qingliu a little surprised. As we all know, waveguide is the energy of the living thing itself. Only living things can have waveguides, and dead things will not have waveguides. But Lucario now said that the other party has a waveguide but is not alive. "Can you feel what it is specifically?" Lucario was silent for a moment after hearing this, as if he was sensing it. After a while, its voice sounded again. "It looks like a pool of water, but also like a lake." "Lake? But there is no lake near Vale City, are you sure?" "Sure." Qingliu took out the map from his backpack, checked it carefully, and confirmed that there was indeed no lake mark here. Lizzie Lake, one of the 3 largest lakes in the Sinnoh region, should also be in the forest in the east. There shouldn't be a lake here. Wait. A flash of inspiration came to his mind. Qingliu suddenly remembered that there was indeed a lake between Vale City and Binhe City. A lake that was not marked on any map but really existed. The Fountain of Farewell. The 4th legendary lake in the Sinnoh region hidden here, and also the home of the legendary Pokemon in the Sinnoh region. Giratina. It was also the refuge in his plan. Chapter 110, Proud Dragon. "We've arrived so soon," Qingliu said to himself. The Fountain of Farewell, also known as the Fountain of Gift, is, as the name suggests, a spring for farewell. According to legend, the souls of all dead lives will enter the world of the dead, the spirit world from here. This spirit world is not the reverse world of Giratina, but a place similar to hell where only the dead exist. It can be said that the spirit world is the source of ghosts and many local legends. In episode 89 of DP, a ghost girl who controlled the mind and wanted to pull people into the spirit world appeared, and was finally saved by the night demon. And there is a cave beside such a spring lake. A cave full of fog, like a maze, is the entrance to the reverse world of Giratina, the lord of the reverse world. It can be said that such a small place has gathered two extremely dangerous elements. One is the spirit world. If you are not careful, you may lose your mind and be sucked in. The other is Giratina itself. Strong light and shadows are born, which is the best description of Giratina. It is called the shadow of Arceus. Because of its violent character, it was eventually exiled to the back of the world. It is so terrifying. No matter which one it is a great threat to Qingliu and can easily be fatal. But the danger is equal. Giratina does not distinguish between good and bad people. It vents its anger in a differentiated way. Everyone should behave themselves when they get there. But what is the lake full of wave guides that Lucario said? Lucario's answer to this is, although it is vague, maybe in that lake full of wave guides, Pokemon's injuries can recover faster. Recover from injuries? Qingliu's expression became serious when he heard this. Now, whether it is Blue Eyes White Dragon, Lucario, or Blue Cotton Bird, they are all injured or have consumed a lot of physical strength, and Tyrannosaurus is even more seriously injured. If he could really heal the wounds and restore them to their peak state, he would have enough confidence to escape unscathed, whether he left directly with a Blue Eyes White Dragon or faced the pursuers of Team Jinga head-on. But if he couldn't do it, the Blue Eyes White Dragon's physical strength would be wasted, and Team Jinga would catch up with him later. Thinking of this, Qingliu suddenly laughed. It's a matter of time anyway, it doesn't matter if it's sooner or later, and a blue panel appeared in front of Qingliu. The series of events that happened was so tight that he almost forgot about the summoning panel. If I remember correctly, the farewell fountain and the homeward cave existed so long ago that they can be traced back to the time when Sinnoh was still called the Washing Green. He was busy with the ruins as his main target, but forgot that Sinnoh also had things with a long history, such as the 3 lakes where the 3 sacred mushrooms lived. Even if we can't enter the cave on the way home, the Fountain of Farewell should be enough for a summon. Thinking of this, Qingliu gently patted the Blue Eyes White Dragon, pointed to the location reported by Lucario and said, "Go in that direction at full speed. If everything goes well, we may have a big fight next." Hearing this, the Blue Eyes White Dragon spread its wings as much as possible, and shot straight towards the Fountain of Farewell amidst the howling wind. Passing through the tall and dense forest, the Blue Eyes White Dragon hovered in the air. Qingliu stood on its back and looked down. According to Lucario, this is where it felt the wave guide. But there was nothing in the field of vision except the endless green. "I can be sure that it is here." Lucario's voice sounded again, full of certainty. Qingliu was silent for a moment, then said, "Blue Eyes White Dragon, control your strength and use exploding wind bullet downwards." The Blue Eyes White Dragon nodded, opened its mouth, and a faint light and electricity condensed in its mouth, but the continuous high-speed flight had severely squeezed its physical strength, and in the end, it only condensed a fist-sized exploding wind bullet and shot it towards the forest below. Qingliu stared closely at the exploding wind bullet falling. Watching it fall rapidly with the electric current jumping, it soon approached the ground, causing ripples in the space, and then disappeared. It really disappeared. Qingliu looked at the place where the exploding wind bullet disappeared just now, then opened the panel and looked around. In the forest that was originally full of greenery but did not see any Pokemon, the information of Pokemon's illustrated book appeared one by one. It was as if it appeared out of thin air. The space here is distorted, so it forms a sleight of hand. After a moment of silence, Qingliu said seriously, "Blue Eyes White Dragon, just rush down." In response to Qingliu's words, Blue Eyes White Dragon immediately took action. It is unknown whether it was out of simple trust or disdain. Buzz! Seeing that Blue Eyes White Dragon was getting closer and closer to the ground, and also getting closer and closer to the place where the explosive wind bomb disappeared just now, Qingliu suddenly heard a buzzing sound in his ears. Then, the light changed drastically, and Qingliu couldn't help but close his eyes due to the strong light. After his eyes slightly adapted, he raised his head and looked around. A scene completely different from the green he saw outside came into his eyes. A lake that was even larger than the largest Qingliu had ever seen was located in the sunken terrain. The blue water mixed with a little black was rippling under the movement of some water Pokemon. What made Qingliu feel most unusual was the water Pokemon living in this lake. Their average size is about 1/3 larger than the same type of Pokemon in his impression, and each of them is very energetic, giving people a feeling of endless energy. This perfectly matches the status displayed on the panel illustration, which is energetic. This also makes Qingliu feel a little certain that the water in the farewell fountain mentioned by Lucario is not ordinary. I don't know if it can heal injuries, but at least it is indeed extraordinary. Moreover, the level of these water Pokemon in front of him is mostly above level 20, except for some that look younger. Qingliu even saw a few Golducks and a Gyarados. They were very wary of themselves who suddenly appeared in the Blue Eyes White Dragon, whose size and appearance look very oppressive, and their eyes were full of vigilance. For these glances, the Blue Eyes White Dragon, even though it was very tired at the moment, still raised its head and chest, ignoring them with a proud attitude. But Qingliu knew that its physical strength had almost reached its limit and it was just holding on. Then he found a place where there were no Pokemon gathered and said, "Blue Eyes White Dragon, go to the corner over there." Then the man and the dragon landed on the edge of the lake. Almost as soon as it landed, the Blue Eyes White Dragon could no longer control itself. Its body trembled slightly and fell to the ground. Its long dragon tail drooped along the ground into the lake. "Thank you for your hard work." Qingliu squatted down, fed it a bag of energy cubes that he had specially picked out for the dragon type, and gently stroked the head of the Blue Eyes White Dragon. If it weren't for it, his current situation would definitely be very bad. But from the perspective of the Blue Eyes White Dragon, it had to fight continuously as soon as it was born, and then fly continuously at high speed. Such a burden is indeed a bit heavy. The Blue Eyes White Dragon swallowed the food in its mouth in one gulp, and a hint of aftertaste appeared on its face, and then its huge blue eyes turned to Qingliu. Qingliu then comforted him, "Don't worry, as long as this spring water works, the physical strength will soon be able to make those guys look bad." Hearing Qingliu's words, the Blue Eyes White Dragon nodded slightly, but did not make any other movements, and continued to stare closely. What's wrong?" Qingliu couldn't help asking. There was no reply, no movement, and it remained motionless, which made Qingliu a little confused. Seeing that Qingliu couldn't understand what it meant, the Blue Eyes White Dragon seemed to be a little impatient, and raised its claws just about to make a move. Suddenly, a sound came from its stomach. "Gurgle Blue Eyes White Dragon." "Qingliu. So, you are hungry." Qingliu suddenly realized. Ever since the energy cube was thrown to the Blue Eyes White Dragon when it repelled Jupiter and left, it seemed to be very interested in this thing. Thinking of this, Qingliu immediately started to take things out of his backpack. When the Blue Eyes White Dragon saw Qingliu's actions, his face changed slightly, and he slowly climbed up from the ground with his front paws to support his body, and turned around to show that he was not very interested in these things. At this time, the voice sounded again. Goo goo. The atmosphere gradually became awkward, and the Blue Eyes White Dragon's movements also froze in midair. "Actually, it's normal to want to eat when you're hungry, and you've been busy since you came out of the legendary Whitestone, and you haven't eaten anything." I didn't think it through. Qingliu generously left all the food in the backpack with the necessary amount, and took it all out and placed it in front of the Blue Eyes White Dragon. When the Blue Eyes White Dragon heard Qingliu's words, it didn't mean to be grateful at all. Instead, it seemed as if it was stimulated, and its wings suddenly spread, as if it was about to fly away. Such an expression made Qingliu frown, and at this moment he couldn't help but think of some female characters in the second dimension. After quickly considering the words, he hurriedly said loudly, "I'm sorry, I misunderstood. I took these things out to let you taste them and see if they are suitable for the taste of Dragon-type Pokemon. After all, in addition to you, the other two classmates are also Dragon-type. If they don't suit your taste, it will be a waste if you buy too much." After saying that, Qingliu didn't care whether the Blue Eyes White Dragon accepted it or not, and ran away directly. As he walked, he turned his head slightly and used the corner of his eye to look at the Blue Eyes White Dragon, whose eyes were wandering between him and the food, and who said, "Since this is the case, I can only help you taste it reluctantly." He couldn't help but smile. "I didn't expect that you are so proud and arrogant when fighting, but you are also a little arrogant when it comes to eating. There's still time before 12 o'clock. Chapter 111. The Fourth Summoning. After settling the Blue Eyes White Dragon, Qingliu came to the edge of the lake and slowly squatted down, reaching out his hand and reaching into the lake water. It's no different from normal water temperature. Qingliu said to himself. But as he stirred in the water for a longer time, the water temperature suddenly turned to chilly and piercing cold. When Qingliu wanted to withdraw his hand, a trace of warmth slowly emerged, and the water temperature returned to normal. This inexplicable feeling of ice and fire surprised Qingliu a little, and he immediately called Lucario out of the Poké Ball. Hurry up and confirm whether this water is really effective. Lucario was not big after hearing this, and stepped into the lake and walked forward until the lake water submerged its thighs. It stopped. As the appendage behind the ear floated up, the blue wave power merged into the water along its lower body, and the originally clear blue and black lake water appeared in a more pure wave blue. Then, a scene that surprised Qingliu happened. Under the illumination of the wave power, the lake began to emit a faint light that illuminated the area, and at the same time, it also illuminated a series of ghost-like figures floating in the air. Roughly counting, there were no less than 30. These are not ghost-type Pokémon, but real ghosts. Qingliu looked at the figures floating from all directions, drifting towards the center of the lake, and finally gradually merging into the bottom of the river. Are these the so-called souls going to the spirit world? Qingliu whispered to himself. He didn't expect that in the Pokemon world, he could actually see ghosts, and there were so many of them. But surprisingly, even if he saw the ghosts with his own eyes, he didn't feel any fear in his mind. Instead, as these ghosts became more and more, a warm feeling began to spread all over his body. These dead souls have been sublimated the moment they disappeared in the center of the lake, so people will not feel scared subconsciously. Moreover, it seems that after entering the bottom of the lake, there will be a little energy residue that will be fed back to this space. This lake is like a feedback converter. Lucario suddenly expanded the range of the wave power, illuminating the center, and Qingliu clearly saw the energy residue that was fed back in Lucario's mouth. Compared to converter, I feel more like a middleman. Qingliu couldn't help but mutter to himself when he saw that only 1/3 of the energy was dissipating and disappearing, while more was left in the lake. Middleman? What do you mean? Lucario was a little confused. Nothing, that is to say, this lake is indeed useful for healing injuries, right? Well, I can feel that the recovery speed is many times faster than your healing spray, and it seems that not only the body, but also the spirit can be relieved a lot. Hearing this, Qingliu immediately took out 2 Poké Balls. The first red light flashed, and the tired blue bird appeared above Qingliu's head. Seeing that there was water all around, the blue bird was a little confused. Its 2 little paws stepped back and forth on its head, and it seemed a little uneasy. It's okay. You can recover your energy here as soon as possible. Chirp. Don't worry. Qingliu took the blue bird off his head, and after comforting it a little, he put it in the water. Faced with such a scene, the blue bird spread its cotton-like wings a little awkwardly, trying to expand the area of its body. At the same time, its 2 little paws paddled the water in a panic, trying not to sink. This cute look made Qingliu laugh. Don't worry, with your body size and weight, you can't sink. On the contrary, if you continue to let your wings touch the water, you will eventually absorb water and increase your weight to enough to sink. The blue bird was stunned when he heard this. No wonder the more it spread its wings, the more it felt that it was a little strenuous in every move. It quickly folded its wings and looked at Qingliu with a bit of resentment. At the same time, it kept chirping, as if blaming Qingliu for not telling it earlier, which almost let it sink into the water. Qingliu shook his head helplessly. But it seems that the lake is indeed effective as Lucario said. Qingliu's spirits have improved a lot in such a short time. Then Qingliu stood up and walked to a place a little distance away from Qingliu and Lucario, took out the Poké Ball, and pressed the button. After a moment of silence, the scarred Tyrannosaurus appeared, and its huge body fell into the water and leaned against the shore. In an instant, a lot of water in the lake overflowed, and at the same time, thick waves were stirred up and rippled further away. This huge movement made all the other native Pokémon on the other side of the lake look over in surprise. Even the blue-eyes white dragon, who was eating the energy cube, looked up. After seeing the appearance and size of Tyrannosaurus, his eyes gradually became sharp. Qingliu ignored the gazes of these people or Pokémon and squatted down quietly beside Tyrannosaurus again. Looking at the small wounds on its body that had almost recovered, as well as other hideous large wounds, Qingliu sighed softly. He had already learned from Lucario what happened after he fainted, and he also knew that Tyrannosaurus was stimulated by his injury, causing it to break and bleed all over, and eventually turned into bones and evolved into a zombie Tyrannosaurus. But the more he knew, The more Qingliu could feel the weight of this feeling. How much determination and perseverance, and how much courage did Tyrannosaurus need to protect itself even when its blood was drained? Qingliu didn't know. But Qingliu would never let such a thing happen again. Have a good sleep, and everything will be fine when you wake up, Qingliu said softly. It seemed that Tyrannosaurus really heard Qingliu's whispers. The body that was originally stiff against the shore began to slowly recover, and it lay down gently, and its breathing became stable. The surrounding lake water exuded a faint light, repairing the injuries on its body. Qingliu stood and watched for a few minutes. After confirming that there were no other problems, he distanced himself from Tyrannosaurus again and looked at the lake. The panel appeared, and small blue characters flashed before his eyes. Ancient traces detected. Start exploration. Exploring. In the field of vision that only Qingliu could see, a blue light centered on himself instantly covered the entire farewell fountain. Then, the small blue characters continued to jump. Target locked. Exploring. Hidden spring. Farewell fountain. Detected. Exploring. Exploration progress. 0%, 3%, 8%, 21%, 100%. Exploration completed. Can be summoned. Summoning object. Random. Yes, no, yes. Qingliu clicked to confirm, and the panel turned into a star-studded pattern and began to rotate and jump non-stop. After dozens of seconds, the jumping speed gradually slowed down. Finally, it stopped at a pattern that Qingliu had never seen before. It was a cube, with several very irregular metal stripes on each of the 6 faces, but it seemed to have some kind of regular power stripes. After a moment, the small blue characters appeared again. Confirmed summoning object, Time Digital Alloy, Summoning. Chapter 112, Time Digital Alloy. The panel turned into dots of particles and began to rotate slowly. As the rotation speed became faster and faster, a hole connecting to the void was finally opened. The next second, a metal-like virtual object appeared in front of him. Under Qingliu's gaze, it began to solidify little by little, and finally became a solid object, falling heavily on the ground, and the summoning channel also turned into a panel and disappeared. Qingliu looked at the silver cube alloy in front of him with a side length of about 1 meter. Combined with the summoning object displayed on the panel just now, Qingliu fell into deep thought. He had learned about this thing before when he saw it mentioned in the introduction of Wargreymon, so he was not unfamiliar with it. The full name of the Time Digital Alloy is Time Digital Metal Hybrid Organic Alloy, abbreviated as TO Alloy. It is a super metal made of the Time Digital Metal made of Huanglong Mine, which is known for its absolute hardness in the Digimon world, and then made through various fine proportions. This super alloy has absolute hardness, and at the same time it is soft enough to integrate with Digimon. It is a top-level auxiliary prop that greatly improves the attack and defense of Digimon when evolving. You know, the Thor's Hammer of Zudaman, which is called the Hammer, the paint that covered the entire body of Medalsimusman to become the ultimate form, the metal armor and trident arm on Machine Greymon, the armor on the entire body of Wargreymon, and the famous Dinobuster. All of these things that greatly enhance combat power are made of Time Digizoid. It can be said that this alloy is very, very precious. It's a bit similar to the evolution of carrying items in the Pokemon world, but there is an essential difference in the strength of the two. Qingliu muttered to himself and gently placed his palm on it. A unique cool feeling of metal alloys came from the contact point. Although I don't know whether the Time Digizoid will be automatically generated when Greymon evolves into Machine Greymon, it's always better to be prepared anyway. If there is no Time Digizoid, you can directly replace it, and if there is, give it more. Moreover, not only Tyrannosaurus, if there are any left in the future, maybe we can change our thinking to replace the metal film, and then try to combine it with Pokemon. There are also special metals in the Pokemon world, and the more famous one is the metal film. The metal film is a special metal that is soft and hard, which completely meets the setting of the Time Digital Alloy, and even meets it like a mini version. If there is a chance in the future, you can try it. Next, you should think about how to take this thing away. Although this is a soft and hard alloy, it does not mean that it has no weight. On the contrary, its weight is very amazing, at least for humans. Qingliu's arms gradually tried to push hard, but the Time Digital Alloy in front of him did not move at all. Don't tell me that I can summon it but can't take it away. Then he tried several methods, and finally tried to put it directly on the capsule backpack and carry it away, but all failed without exception. Qingliu let out a long breath, moved his palms helplessly, and suddenly saw the mark of the sacred plant on the palm of his right hand, and a possibility flashed through his mind. Before this, the panel had summoned 3 times. Apart from Agumon and the legendary Shiraishi, the only summoned Digimon plan had been integrated into his right hand. Does that mean that he could actually absorb this thing? Maybe, in addition to the human body of the Digimon plan, he could also become a Digimon of time that surpassed the Super Rookie? Thinking of this, Qingliu tentatively stretched out his left hand and gently placed it on the Digimon of time, but there was no reaction. Qingliu then covered it with his entire palm. Still no reaction. Qingliu frowned slightly, and then placed his right palm with the Digimon plan mark on it. Suddenly, the Digimon plan mark burst into dazzling light, covering the entire Digimon of time. The next second, the entire alloy instantly shattered countless black tiny data that was almost invisible to the naked eye, and rushed towards the Digimon plan mark. At the same time, a line of small blue words appeared in the column of Digimon plan on the panel. Time digital alloy reserved 100%, stored called out, the left hand doesn't work, but the right hand with the divine plan can. It's really a strange convenience. Qingliu looked at the palm that was receiving the data and said to himself. After receiving it, he tried a few times to absorb and restore it very conveniently. Qingliu raised his head and looked in the other direction of the lake. There was a cave there. The farewell spring had been explored, and the next step was to try the homeward cave. Compared with the farewell spring, the risk factor of the homeward cave rose sharply, but even so, Qingliu planned to try it. It was rare to encounter something that met the panel summoning conditions. If you don't even try it, it would be a pity. And, no matter how rough your personality is, you won't just take a look at its door and come directly in person. Qingliu walked over slowly. As the distance got closer and closer, Qingliu became more and more cautious, keeping an eye on all directions and listening to all directions, raising his vigilance to the highest level. As he approached, the number of Pokémon lingering on the edge of the lake or swimming underwater decreased. Even within a few dozen steps of the cave entrance, not a single Pokémon could be seen. Obviously, the light here was the most abundant and the water temperature was more comfortable, but strangely, no Pokémon dared to approach this area. When they saw Aoyagi approaching the cave, the Pokémon that were originally playing stopped and looked at Aoyagi in shock. Even Gyarados, who was known for his violent temper, watched very quietly at this moment. It seems that they are also afraid in their subconscious. Aoyagi looked at their reactions and became more alert. Then he turned on the Pokémon detection function and waited quietly for a minute. After not detecting any information about Gyarados, he activated the exploration function of the summoning panel, and the blue light quickly covered the surroundings. Lines of small blue words came into view. Target locked, exploring, reversed world detected, return cave. Exploring, exploration progress. 0%, 1.5%, 2%, 2%. Sure enough, it's the same as the time at the random ruins. If the field of vision can see the end, or if there is something that is basically unobstructed, then you only need to see it with your naked eyes, and the panel can directly complete the exploration just like the keystone of the Flower Rock Monster and the Farewell Fountain. But if there is a blind spot, or it cannot be seen with the naked eye, the exploration progress will stop, just like the last area blocked by stones in the random town ruins. Qingliu began to carefully estimate the distance between himself and the return cave, trying to ensure safety as much as possible and explore more. There are less than 10 meters left. If there's anything wrong, run away immediately. Qingliu thought so, and carefully raised his leg and took a step forward. Buzz! An extremely faint sound rang in my ears. The originally sunny world suddenly changed in an instant, and the black mixed with purple light began to quickly permeate the surroundings like paint splashed on the wall, and a feeling of oppression descended. Then, a feeling of dizziness came over him, and the whole world seemed to turn upside down. Qingliu was shocked and quickly stabilized his body, while stepping back violently. As he left the previous range, the black and purple disappeared in front of his eyes, and the world became bright again. Huff, inhale, inhale, inhale. Qingliu took several deep breaths in succession to calm his dizzy head and pounding heart. Is the 10-meter range the restricted area? Looking at the footprints he had just stepped on and the position he was standing at now, Qingliu squeezed his brain and quickly concluded. That feeling doesn't look like Gyarados, and the Pokémon doesn't give any information about the appearance of the Pokémon, which means it didn't come, so, what just appeared in front of me should be the reverse world. But even if it wasn't Gyarados, Qingliu gave up the idea of continuing. Trying this kind of thing once is enough, and it's easy to have accidents if you try it more than once. Besides, he doesn't have the ability and strength to really go to the reverse world now, and it won't be too late to come back when he is strong enough in the future. Qingliu exhaled and prepared to leave. Suddenly, Lucario's wave was transmitted directly to his ears from the other side of the lake. "Come back quickly, your dinosaur is a little bit wrong." "Huh?" Qingliu heard this and turned his head sharply. He saw that Tyrannosaurus, who was supposed to be lying on the shore, stood up for some reason, his eyes were closed, and he walked towards the center of the lake step by step. Chapter 113, See the Violence Again? Qingliu ran back quickly, shouting in front of him, "Did Tyrannosaurus wake up just now? Or did something happen?" At this distance, the sound might not be transmitted clearly and accurately, but Qingliu knew that Lucario's wave guide would definitely hear it. It didn't wake up, and there was no sign. It suddenly stood up and started moving. Lucario's wave guide transmission sounded quickly. There was no sign. Qingliu quickly looked at Tyrannosaurus, opened the panel, and checked the status information of Tyrannosaurus. Status: General, continuously recovering, it's okay. Seeing these two small blue words, Qingliu's heart sank. The panel didn't detect anything unusual, so what was going on with Tyrannosaurus now? Chirp chirp. The bluebird flew to Qingliu's side and made an anxious cry in the direction of Tyrannosaurus. "I know, don't be anxious." After comforting the bluebird a little, he placed it on his head and then started running at full speed to close the distance between him and Tyrannosaurus. Standing in front, Qingliu also confirmed that just as he had seen before, Tyrannosaurus was closing his eyes at the moment, but his body was mechanically moving slowly towards the center of the lake. Most of its wounds had healed, with only a few too serious ones remaining on its body. The aura emanating from its body was also very stable, with no signs of abnormality. Qingliu took out the Poké Ball, aimed at the location of Tyrannosaurus, and pressed the button. Red light shot out from the ball and landed on Tyrannosaurus. But what Qingliu didn't expect was that after the red light fell, it didn't take Tyrannosaurus back directly as usual, but instead lost contact like a drop in the ocean. Qingliu pressed the button several times in a row, and red light shot out one after another, but the final result was failure. Even the Poké Ball didn't work. Was it because of Tyrannosaurus himself, or was there something wrong with the lake water? Seeing Qingliu rushing over, Lucario on the side immediately jumped in front of Qingliu. Qingliu turned his head sharply, staring at it, and said in a bad tone, "You'd better not let me know that you did anything." Lucario spread his hands calmly. "First of all, it wasn't me. Secondly, even if I really wanted to do something, I wouldn't do it now. Don't forget that we are in the same boat now." Qingliu heard this and didn't ask any more questions. He also knew that it was unlikely that Lucario did it, but he still had to do the necessary tests, just in case. "You don't have to be too anxious. Its injuries have recovered almost completely, and my wave guide didn't feel anything wrong with it. It's like," Lucario said, hesitating a little. "Just say what you want to say. In my hometown, talking halfway is like giving birth without an asshole." Qingliu glanced at it coldly. Lucario seemed to be a little uncomfortable with this vicious curse. After a moment of silence, he said, "It feels like sleepwalking." "Sleepwalking?" Qingliu raised his head and looked at Tyrannosaurus. "Indeed, once you substitute this word, you will find that Tyrannosaurus is really sleepwalking. But since summoning Agumon, Qingliu has not found any signs of sleepwalking in the nights they spent together. He even rarely talks in his sleep. There is another key point, that is, if you step on water while sleepwalking, you will wake up, right? He is simply waiting in the lake. If he is sleepwalking, he should wake up. Even if he doesn't wake up, he should not be unable to retract the Poké Ball. There must be something wrong. Moreover, as Tyrannosaurus gets closer to the center, the lake becomes deeper and deeper, and now it has submerged Tyrannosaurus's abdomen. If he walks further, he will probably be completely submerged and drowned before he wakes up or reaches the center of the lake. In any case, he can't be allowed to go on." Lucario. Qingliu turned his head and looked at Lucario, saying, "Use the wave power to limit its pace as much as possible, and it would be best if you can control it in place." After saying that, without waiting for Lucario to respond, Qingliu shouted directly to the Blue Eyes White Dragon on the other side, "Blue Eyes White Dragon, grab Tyrannosaurus by the shoulder with your claws and drag it up for me." The Blue Eyes White Dragon, who was eating, heard the sound and put the energy cube aside, then flapped its wings and rushed straight to the water where Tyrannosaurus was. Seeing this, Lucario took a horse stance to stabilize his body, raised his arms and stretched them out towards Tyrannosaurus, and the blue wave surged, and soon covered Tyrannosaurus' body under its control. These wave powers wrapped Tyrannosaurus like a layer of outer clothing, and then suddenly contracted, interfering with Tyrannosaurus's movements from head to tail, and fixed Tyrannosaurus's body, which had just been raised to take the next step, in the middle of the way. The huge inertia exploded with a foot that did not step firmly on the ground, causing Tyrannosaurus to tilt to one side, and the tilt angle became larger and larger as time went by, until it was about to fall. At this time, the blue-eyes white dragon appeared above Tyrannosaurus. The wind caused by the flapping of its huge wings blew ripples on the lake surface. The next second, the blue-eyes white dragon stretched out its arm and passed through Tyrannosaurus' armpit and then kicked it back, gradually increasing the speed of its wings flapping. Woo-woo, the sound of violent airflow blowing through the air rang out, and the flapping of the wings of the blue-eyes white dragon reached a terrifying level. All the Pokémon around were frightened and fled by the sudden movement. Lucario also let out a low roar, and the wave power surged more violently, cooperating with the blue-eyes white dragon. Seeing this, the blue bird also flapped its wings and landed on the horn on the top of Tyrannosaurus' head, grabbed the big horn with its claws, and used all its strength to lift it up. Slowly, Tyrannosaurus was pulled out of the lake. "Hold on, it's almost done," Qingliu reminded him hurriedly. Upon hearing this, the three Pokémon continued to burst out their strength and lifted Tyrannosaurus up again, leaving only its legs in the water. "Keep it like this, move to the left side of the lake," Qingliu continued to command, while holding the Poké Ball in his palm, and waited until Tyrannosaurus was out of the lake to try to get it back into the ball. With the joint efforts of the three Pokémon, Tyrannosaurus got closer and closer to the shore, until it was completely close to the shore and returned to the position where Tyrannosaurus was at the beginning. Qingliu couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief when he saw this, and was about to let the three Pokémon, who had consumed a lot of energy, work harder to transport Tyrannosaurus to the shore. However, Tyrannosaurus, who had been motionless, began to struggle violently at this moment, and instantly shook off Blue-Eyes White Dragon and Blue Cotton Bird, and then burst out to break free from the restraints of the wave power of the Lucario, and his body fell back into the lake. As he fell asleep again, his movement stopped again. The three Pokémon were a little confused by the sudden scene, but Qingliu's face had become solemn. Because, even at this moment, Tyrannosaurus still did not seem to wake up, and still made a series of movements with his eyes closed. It seems that there is something wrong with this lake water. Qingliu immediately planned to command the three Pokémon to take the next step, but before he could open his mouth, Tyrannosaurus standing in the water opened his mouth first. A gust of wind surged, and the entire lake began to rotate with it as the center. This is. Under the reflection of Lucario's wave power, Qingliu found that the energy that the souls mentioned before returned to the spirit world and merged into the lake was now turning into a beam of energy light along the rotating lake water and pouring into Tyrannosaurus. The next second, a series of red rays enveloped Tyrannosaurus' head, and its originally huge body began to lose weight, as if it was rapidly moving towards a skinny direction. At the same time, some parts of its shoulders seemed to grow sharp bones out of thin air, protruding from under the skin. A strong breath instantly emanated from his body. This sudden scene reminded Qingliu of what Lucario had said before, about what happened when Tyrannosaurus evolved into Zombie Tyrannosaurus. Could it be that the absorption of the ghostly energy from the ghosts once again stimulated the Zombie Tyrannosaurus data in Tyrannosaurus? Chapter 114, Mutation. As Tyrannosaurus' body became thinner, the brown carapace on the top of his head began to spread downward in the red light, and the thorn-like bone protrusions on his shoulders became higher and sharper. At the same time, the breath of Tyrannosaurus became stronger and stronger, and a faint invisible pressure gathered around his body. Qingliu's heart was beating wildly at this moment. Today is different from the past. If Tyrannosaurus is really affected and evolves into a zombie Tyrannosaurus now, the situation will become very bad. Not to mention that his body, which has just recovered from a serious injury, will definitely suffer another serious injury. He no longer has the legendary White Stone in his hand to resist the Blast Heartland, and the Blue Eyes White Dragon hatched by the White Stone obviously does not have such a strong defense. Moreover, the place they are in now is also very sensitive. The center of the lake is the entrance to the spirit world, and the cave on the edge of the lake is the doorstep of the home of the three dragons of Sinnoh. Giratina. If there is really a big commotion, and finally it leads to falling into the unknown spirit world, or attracting the real body of Giratina in the reverse world, the consequences are simply unimaginable. Even if zombie Tyrannosaurus theoretically has the ability to fight against the divine beast, that is when the level difference is not big. Now the level is always too low. Qingliu is still aware of this. The only thing that can be confirmed now is that there must be something wrong with this water, which has caused some unknown changes in Tyrannosaurus. We must let it leave here and see if we can get it back into the ball. This is also the only way that can be thought of so far. Qingliu then shouted to Blue Eyes White Dragon and Lucario, "Try to drag Tyrannosaurus ashore again." Blue Eyes White Dragon nodded and dived towards Tyrannosaurus, while Lucario raised his hand again to exert the power of wave. But before Blue Eyes White Dragon and the power of wave approached, Tyrannosaurus's whole body suddenly surged, and while forcibly breaking through the power of wave that Lucario covered it, its thick tail swung, and the dark blue dragon energy lingered on it, and the dragon tail whipped towards Blue Eyes White Dragon. Blue Eyes White Dragon had to be forced to turn around to avoid the attack. After doing all this, Tyrannosaurus became quiet again, without opening his eyes. Qingliu's shouting had no effect, as if he was just defending instinctively. "Lucario, did you sense Tyrannosaurus's consciousness?" Qingliu asked when he saw this. "It's still the same as before, no reaction." Lucario replied while controlling the power of the wave. "Without consciousness, can you use defensive moves spontaneously? In this state, it would definitely not work to drag it away by force. There is still a big gap between the combat power of Blue Eyes White Dragon and Tyrannosaurus. It would definitely not work to take it away by force, and that would aggravate Tyrannosaurus's injuries. Since it doesn't work to make it leave the water, let the water leave it." Blue Eyes White Dragon. Qingliu called Blue Eyes White Dragon over and took Lucario to the dragon. Blue Eyes White Dragon then flapped its wings and came to the sky above Tyrannosaurus. At this moment, Tyrannosaurus was motionless, just opening its mouth to absorb the energy in the lake, which was completely different from the attacking posture just now, as if they didn't exist as long as they didn't get close. "Lucario, Blue Eyes White Dragon, try to push the lake water around Tyrannosaurus away, so that it is in an environment where it can't be touched by the lake water." Lucario heard this and said, "It's possible, but..." As if suddenly remembering the hometown curse that Qingliu had mentioned before, Lucario paused and continued, "But these lake waters are mixed with energy, which is somewhat different from ordinary water. The difficulty and consumption will definitely be very high, and it may not succeed. You must seize the opportunity. Okay, do it." Qingliu's voice fell, and Lucario's eyes flashed with blue light, and the appendages behind his ears floated up. The surging wave power of his whole body fell on the lake water, forcibly pushing it away from Tyrannosaurus. At the same time, Blue Eyes White Dragon quickly vibrated its wings, creating a stream of air to blow the lake water. The bluebird also imitated the Blue Eyes White Dragon, flapping its cotton-like wings to blow out a small stream of air. With the wave guide force as the main force and the airflow as the auxiliary force, all the lake water under Tyrannosaurus Rex was pushed out to the surroundings. Under their full strength burst, the lake water began to be pushed little by little. But even if they tried their best, the speed of pushing the lake water full of energy was very limited. After a few minutes, they only pushed more than 20 centimeters, which was far from the size of Tyrannosaurus Rex. The force generated by the lake water that was constantly rotating around Tyrannosaurus Rex under the pull of Tyrannosaurus Rex created a great obstacle for them to force it away. It is destined to be a tug-of-war. Qingliu also discovered this problem, but now there seems to be no other solution except persistence. Taking out the last part of the energy cube in the backpack, Qingliu threw it out to replenish the physical strength of whoever he saw was about to reach the limit. Lucario, who had recovered most of his injuries and condition with the help of the lake water, sweated profusely and urged the wave power to push the lake water around. Blue Eyes White Dragon and Blue Cotton Bird were panting and trying their best to raise the wind to assist. With a double efforts, the more than 20-centimeter puddle gradually evolved into a downward groove in the lake water under Tyrannosaurus. The groove sank and the lake water decreased. You can even vaguely see the soles of Tyrannosaurus in the lake water, and it is not far from completely draining the water. This is undoubtedly good news. Lucario and Blue Cotton Bird showed a hint of joy on their faces, and even the arrogant Blue Eyes White Dragon couldn't help but raise his head. But the joy came and went quickly. As Tyrannosaurus absorbed energy faster, the rotating lake water began to surge and beat one wave after another, filling the groove just formed in an instant. Compared with them, the lake water, which has no concept of physical strength, is obviously more durable. Damn it! Qingliu threw 3 energy cubes into their mouths accurately, while holding Tyrannosaurus's Poké Ball tightly, and said quickly, "Hold on, just push a little further out." Gurgle as the energy cubes were swallowed, the energy generated after digestion allowed the 3 Pokémon to recover a lot of their physical strength in a short period of time. Then, regardless of their tired arms and wings that were beginning to burn, they mobilized their energy with all their strength to drive the water at a faster and stronger speed. But they were fast, and the lake was even faster. They didn't even give the blue-eyes white dragon a chance to react. One after another, the water began to force the groove that Tyrannosaurus had finally appeared under his feet, and all his efforts were in vain. At this moment, a blue light suddenly shot from a distance and fell on the lake. The originally turbulent and restless lake water seemed to be suspended in time for a moment and stopped in place. There will be more before 12 o'clock, and more will be added tomorrow. Chapter 115. Should I call you Greymon or Terra Greymon? Is this telekinesis? Qingliu raised his head and looked in the direction where the telekinesis came from. Not far away, he saw a blue Golduck, whose body was obviously much more muscular than he remembered, with his finger raised at the center of his brow. The powerful psychic energy was continuously emitted from the crystal at the center of his brow. Quack! After Golduck looked at Qingliu with a rather arrogant look, he increased the energy output again. Next to it, several other Golducks and Psyducks also began to emit telekinesis. The rest of the Pokémon, such as the goldfish led by Gyarados, either attacked the rotating lake surface or swam in the opposite direction to forcibly interfere with the rotation speed of the lake water. "Are you actually helping us?" Qingliu whispered to himself as he saw that they had a clear division of labor. One side used telekinesis to assist Blue Eyes White Dragon, and the other side used the destruction of the Death Beam to bombard the lake surface with the natives of the Farewell Fountain. Qingliu was very surprised that they would take the initiative to help. After all, this matter has nothing to do with them. Even if Tyrannosaurus absorbs more energy, it will only affect the purity of the energy in the lake for a while. Ghosts are infinite and will be replenished in a short time. Generally speaking, they have little impact on them, but they still took action. It is precisely because of their help that the speed of the lake's surface rotation dropped sharply at this moment. Tyrannosaurus' legs standing under the water became clearer and clearer, and the water in the groove became less and less. Until, the water around Tyrannosaurus was completely drained. Lucario immediately transmitted the sound through the wave guide. Good opportunity. Qingliu knew that this was a great opportunity without Lucario's reminder. Almost at the moment when the sound was heard, Qingliu had already pressed the switch of the Poké Ball, and then aimed at the position of Tyrannosaurus below, preparing to throw the Poké Ball with all his strength. But just when Qingliu swung his arms and the ball was about to slip out of his hand, Tyrannosaurus, who had been closing his eyes, suddenly opened his eyes. The clarity in the eyes at this moment, and the information displayed on the panel that had been turned on for detecting information, made Qingliu stop. "Hurry up," Lucario said quickly when he saw Aoyagi suddenly stop, not knowing what was going on. Not only him, but also Blue Eyes White Dragon, Blue Cotton Bird, Golduck and Gyarados were also very exhausted, and they looked at Aoyagi in confusion. "If you don't throw it, you won't be able to hold on," Lucario said with difficulty, but before he finished speaking, he suddenly felt a strong murderous aura locking onto him. Following the aura, he saw Tyrannosaurus's scarlet pupils jumping up and down in his eye sockets. His eyes quickly swept over Blue Cotton Bird, paused for a moment on Blue Eyes White Dragon, and finally fell on himself standing not far away. The next second, Tyrannosaurus's aura soared, and then he took a step and charged. This sudden change made Lucario a little surprised, and he quickly retracted the power of the wave, and jumped to the side in a few jumps, trying to keep some distance. But what he didn't expect was that the originally bright light in front of him seemed to be blocked by something, and it dimmed instantly. When he looked up, the 6-meter-tall Tyrannosaurus had crossed the distance he had just moved and came in front of him. As he swung his arms, his sharp claws cut through the air and grabbed him with a series of sharp sounds. What's going on? This sudden scene made Lucario feel confused. Even if it had not recovered to its prime and had just used a lot of wave power to hollow out its body, its speed was still above average. How could it be caught up so easily? But the claws that attacked would not lie, and Lucario quickly backflipped backwards to avoid it. The next moment it dodged. Tyrannosaurus claws just brushed past the position where it had just stood. If it had been a little slower, I'm afraid the claws would have hit it. When we fought in the gym before, whether it was the dinosaur posture or the skeleton-like monster that evolved, the only thing that was terrifying was its strength and destructive power, and there was nothing eye-catching about its speed. But now its speed is even faster than mine. What's going on? Exclamation mark. Before Lucario could analyze anything, the wave power that had been dispersed around its body sent out a warning. There was no time to think at all. Lucario exerted force with his legs, jumped up, and landed under a big tree about 10 to 20 meters away. When it raised its head to check what was going on, it suddenly found that Tyrannosaurus was gone. A warning suddenly arose in its heart, and at the same time, the wave power around it seemed to be crazy and agitated. Lucario realized something, and when he looked up, Tyrannosaurus also jumped up at some point and flew over its head. I saw 3 huge brown horns surging with violent dark blue dragon energy, smashing straight down at its current location. Not only did it catch up, but it also launched a move in the gap of catching up. What the hell is this thing? Lucario instinctively wanted to move his body, but the wave power he had used at full force had completely drained his body. At this moment, he felt his legs go weak and he had no ability to dodge. He could only watch it fall towards him. It's over. This thought flashed through Lucario's mind, and he closed his eyes helplessly, waiting for death to come. As the distance between the two quickly closed, Lucario had no room to dodge. Tyrannosaurus's eyes were full of murderous intent. Just as he was about to kill the guy who entered Qingliu in one breath, he suddenly heard a very familiar voice in his ears. Tyrannosaurus, stop. This voice was. Tyrannosaurus's huge head was working rapidly, but his body reacted first. He forcibly cancelled the move in midair, and flexibly flipped backwards in the air to remove the reaction force of the move. He landed on the ground lightly and steadily, like a dragonfly touching the water. Then he raised his head and looked at the source of the voice just now, the boy standing on the dragon's back. Qingliu. Seeing that Qingliu was safe and sound, Tyrannosaurus instantly threw away his anger and ran directly to the location of Blue Eyes White Dragon. When Qingliu heard Tyrannosaurus calling out his name and seeing his genuine happiness, he couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief and let Blue Eyes White Dragon land on the ground. But just as Blue Eyes White Dragon flapped its wings to descend, and when it was still several meters above the ground, Qingliu suddenly felt the light in front of him suddenly go dark. Tyrannosaurus jumped directly from the ground, and actually jumped to the same height as the flying Blue Eyes White Dragon, and then slowly stretched out his arms towards him. Faced with a sudden and unexpected situation, Blue Eyes White Dragon instinctively thought that it was an attack directed at Qingliu after a brief confusion, so it immediately launched a counterattack, and its huge dragon wings flapped towards Tyrannosaurus. However, Tyrannosaurus was very flexible in controlling its body to shrink in the air, avoiding the attack and falling back to the ground. Then, it jumped up again in place. This time, the speed was faster and the momentum was stronger. It did not give the Blue Eyes White Dragon any time to react or counterattack. It directly reached out and pulled Qingliu from its back. After carefully blocking the airflow with both hands, it fell to the ground. Bang! With a loud noise, Tyrannosaurus, who had stepped on the ground and made 2 big holes, opened his palms carefully and nervously, and put Qingliu in front of him very happily, but his voice was slightly trembling. Qingliu, I'm so glad that you're okay. Qingliu smiled when he heard it, and said gently, don't worry, I'm fine. After that, Qingliu paused for a moment, looked up and down at Tyrannosaurus, and continued. What's wrong with you now? Should I continue to call you Tyrannosaurus, or Earth Tyrannosaurus? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 116 New Form. The Tyrannosaurus in front of him and the Tyrannosaurus in the past are completely different. The brown carapace on the head extends into a series of half-red and half-brown whiskers, and 2 circles of red lines are wrapped around the eyes and horns, adding a fierce atmosphere. The protruding thorn bones on both sides of the shoulders did not develop into the white bones that Qingliu thought of, piercing through the skin and becoming zombie Tyrannosaurus, but grew into thorn shoulder guards with blue ferocious lines. There are 2 short and sharp spikes on the forearm, and the outline of the hard chest muscles is clearly visible, and the mermaid line and strong thigh muscle lines are faintly visible below. If the normal state of Tyrannosaurus is huge and sturdy, it tends to be a little bloated in some parts compared to being strong, which is very consistent with the generals with a body of flesh in ancient history. Then the Tyrannosaurus at this moment is closer to the lean and muscular man in the aesthetics and impressions of modern people. Moreover, judging from its speed just now crushing the Lucario with limited stamina, the whimpering sound when its claws attacked, and the blue-eyes white dragon that jumped more than twice its own height and was able to flexibly dodge attacks in the air, it is definitely not the kind of muscle that is good-looking but useless. However, it is also obviously different from the impression of Terra Greymon. Apart from the lack of the red wristband on its hand, it is now much thinner than Tyrannosaurus, but stronger than Terra Greymon. It does not seem to be one of the two, but is closer to a compromise between the two. Qingliu immediately clicked on the panel illustration. Race: Tyrannosaurus, Earth Tyrannosaurus form, classification, dinosaur Pokemon, attributes, dragon, fire, features, sharp claws. Because its head and claws are too hard and sharp, the power of attack moves using them will increase by 5060%, level 27, exclusive moves, super flame, fire type, power 80, sharp claws, fire type, power 40, super blast, fire type, power 90, Tyrannosaurus charge, dragon type, power 60, horn impact, a powerful attack that uses a giant horn to dash in and crush the enemy, dragon type, power 70, mastered moves, dragon claw, dragon tail, flame fist, flame fang, double cleave, race stats, 510,540, horsepower 88, attack 101,106, defense 9,080, special attack 100, special defense 70, speed 6,696, intimacy 80. Status: normal. Information summary: a special Digimon that combines Greymon and the subspecies form of Greymon, Earth Greymon. It has a harder head shell than Greymon and Earth Greymon, and a more developed weapon-like body, making it a more aggressive form. Divine Plan: through the power of ghosts, it stimulates the remaining fighting will in the consciousness of the perfect form Zombie Greymon, and creates a new form with a mature Greymon itself. It's just as I guessed before. The energy fed back by those ghosts activated the data of Zombie Greymon, which also has ghost attributes, remaining in the body of Greymon. But probably because Greymon has already vented his anger and lost enough anger to support the evolution into Zombie Greymon, it finally activated a branch of Earth Greymon. Previously, he learned the Dragon Claws and Dragon Tail, and now he has mastered a new move of attacking with sharp horns. The characteristic bonus has been improved, and the racial value has also increased by 30 points and added to the speed. In the future, he will completely say goodbye to the slow movement speed and become a ferocious beast with high attack and high speed. This can be considered a blessing in disguise. Tyrannosaurus didn't know what Qingliu was thinking at the moment. It said that it was not very clear about Qingliu's previous question. When you were injured before, Qingliu, I felt very angry. My eyes were blurry, and my whole body was hot and painful. Then my body began to lose control. After that, I felt like I was dreaming. I was drowsy all the time. When I woke up again, I was already like this. Tyrannosaurus seemed to be very curious about this current state. After jumping twice on the spot, it raised its arms and claws, which were thicker than before, and danced back and forth in the air. After being excited for a while, Tyrannosaurus suddenly realized something and asked hurriedly, Qingliu, what happened during the time when you lost consciousness? How did I get here? Hearing Tyrannosaurus's question, Qingliu fell silent. You didn't mention the time when you evolved into Zombie Tyrannosaurus. Did you lose consciousness because you fell into a frenzy? But this is the best way. At least Tyrannosaurus can stabilize his emotions. Otherwise, if it knew, it would definitely resent me for attacking him. So Qingliu decided to skip this part and said, after you lost consciousness and destroyed the gym, someone was chasing us. It just so happened that the legendary White Stone hatched, so we came all the way here from Vale City. At this point, without waiting for Tyrannosaurus to ask questions, Qingliu waved to the Blue Eyes White Dragon not far away to signal him to come over. Before the Blue Eyes White Dragon came over, the Blue Bird, which saw Tyrannosaurus wake up, took the initiative to fly over and circled in the air. After these waves of tossing, its flying skills have improved a lot. After circling in the air twice, It landed accurately on the curved corner of Tyrannosaurus. Chirp chirp, I'm glad to see you too. Tyrannosaurus raised a claw and gently rubbed the blue bird, but accidentally pushed it off the corner without controlling its strength, causing the blue bird to make continuous and rapid protest cries, and the air was suddenly filled with a happy atmosphere. When the blue-eyes white dragon approached, Qingliu took the initiative to introduce. It was hatched from the legendary white stone, called Blue-Eyes White Dragon, and will be our new partner from now on. After that, he turned to the Blue-Eyes White Dragon and said, although its appearance has changed a little, it is still Tyrannosaurus, my first partner. Seeing this, Tyrannosaurus took the initiative to stretch out his claws. Just now, I was a little excited to see Qingliu, so I took the initiative to attack. I'm very sorry. We met before you were still in the stone. I don't know if you still remember. The Blue-Eyes White Dragon did not reply, and could not reply. He could not remember what happened in the stone. He just looked at Tyrannosaurus standing in front of him quietly. The series of actions just now, as well as the feeling in the dark, told it that the guy in front of it was very extraordinary, far stronger than the tank skunk that had fought before, and even comparable to the dog over there. Such a dragon is indeed qualified to be a companion, but it is better not to hold the claws, because it can't bear to snatch someone from its back. Blue-Eyes White Dragon nodded, and ignored the claws that Tyrannosaurus stretched in the air. It flapped its wings and flew back to the shore to continue eating the remaining energy cubes. Tyrannosaurus was left looking at Aoyagi with some embarrassment. Aoyagi shook his head helplessly and said, its personality is like this, don't worry about it. By the way, there is one more thing. Aoyagi turned around and said to Lucario, who was standing on a tree not far away and had been watching, it is our ally for now, so don't attack it. It has helped me, Bluebird and Blue-Eyes White Dragon, a lot along the way. If it weren't for it, we might not be able to get rid of the pursuers behind us. Tyrannosaurus was also confused by Aoyagi's call to stop its attack just now, but since Aoyagi said so, he must have his reasons. It has always been responsible for fighting, and Aoyagi was responsible for thinking. It does whatever Aoyagi says. The only thing it cares about now is the pursuers that Aoyagi mentioned twice. Aoyagi, tell me, who are those guys? There are two more. Chapter 117. The main point is ambush. Team Jinga. Team Jinga. The largest evil organization in the Sinnoh region, whose purpose is to control the legendary Pokémon in the Sinnoh region and use their abilities to create a whole new world. Aoyagi turned around and said, that is the prototype of the two statues at the entrance of the ruins that you said looked very oppressive. Tyrannosaurus couldn't help but be a little surprised, but Aoyagi, didn't you say that they are all Pokémon that have lived for a very long time and are very powerful? How dare they have the idea of attacking them? Aren't they afraid of death? Since they dare to have ideas about them, then they naturally have the confidence to do such things. Aoyagi said slowly, do you still remember what you said at the time that such a powerful Pokémon actually uses their statues as guards? Tyrannosaurus nodded. That's because the Pokémon god who created them and even the entire Pokémon world is enshrined in the ruins. Hearing this, Tyrannosaurus' eyes widened. Even after evolution, its IQ has obviously improved, and it is a little slow to react at this moment. The legendary Pokémon that had existed for countless years and whose statues alone made it feel strongly oppressed was actually created by another Pokémon. Not only did it create a powerful Pokémon, but it also had the ability to create the world. This ability was simply unheard of. It seemed that this world was much more dangerous than what he saw in theory. At this moment, Tyrannosaurus's slight contempt for Pokémon suddenly disappeared. But what does this have to do with those who are chasing us? Qingliu nodded in approval at Tyrannosaurus's ability to find the core of the problem so quickly, and said, it is precisely because they were created that they only need to find something with the remaining power of God to suppress the two legendary Pokémon, and you. Qingliu's eyes fell on Tyrannosaurus and said, they found you who easily destroyed the gym, and thought that you could be used as a tool to help them realize this plan faster, so they started chasing me. They want your power, and they also want my power. When Tyrannosaurus heard this, it skipped over itself and instinctively thought of Aoyagi's previous summons, the divine plan, and the legendary White Stone's ability. If those guys discovered Aoyagi's rare ability, Tyrannosaurus couldn't imagine what would happen. The only thing it could be sure of was that those guys who wanted to rob just for their own ideas would never do anything good. So, Tyrannosaurus' eyes unconsciously turned from scarlet to orange-yellow and looked at Aoyagi, breathing low but full of power. Since they dare to do such a thing, then get rid of them, all of them. Aoyagi was not surprised by Tyrannosaurus' reaction, which was in line with its character. We must get the place back, but there are a lot of them, so we need to be more prepared. We can't be so stupid as to fight one against the crowd. According to incomplete estimates, the other side has at least 20 people, and each person is equipped with 3 Pokemon, which is 60 or more. With such a number, it would be very difficult to fight with only Tyrannosaurus. Preparation? Tyrannosaurus was a little confused. Are there any other Pokemon that can be used besides Aoyagi? Aoyagi did not answer, but turned his head to look at the natives of the Fountain of Farewell in the lake who had just helped and were now looking at him and Tyrannosaurus, unsure of what was going on. Everyone, thank you very much for your help just now. You helped me solve the problem with Tyrannosaurus. Aoyagi stood in the palm of Tyrannosaurus' hand and bowed to them sincerely. When Tyrannosaurus saw Aoyagi's movements and Aoyagi called his name, he also hurriedly imitated and bowed. Aoyagi's actions made the natives, led by Golduck and Gyarados, feel a little embarrassed. Those with hands waved their hands, and those without hands wagged their tails. They all said it was not a big deal, just a little help. Greymon translated. Aoyagi did not reply, but looked directly at their reserved faces. It can be seen that because they live in this environment that is almost isolated from the outside world, their personalities are more or less introverted. And, it's not just their personalities. Aoyagi then took out the last remaining energy cubes that he had just fed to the 3 Pokemon and asked Tyrannosaurus to throw them all to them. Gah! Roar! Golduck and Gyarados looked at the bag that had just been thrown in front of them, and looked at Aoyagi with some confusion, not understanding what this meant. This is a thank you gift for you. The thing inside is called energy cubes. They are very nutritious and can help you not be affected by the reduction of energy in the Fountain of Farewell in the past few days. Hearing Qingliu's words and the faint aroma coming from the bag, the greedy Golduck opened the bag and took out an energy cube, glanced at it twice, and threw it into his mouth. The next second, a sweet and delicious feeling that he had never experienced before exploded in his mouth and instantly rushed to the top of his head. Gah! Gah! Golduck made a cry of admiration and quickly took out 2 more and threw them into his mouth. With 2 approaches, the strong and comfortable taste emerged again. At this moment, Golduck almost couldn't control the superpowers contained in the crystal between his eyebrows. This thing is the most delicious thing it has ever eaten in its life. Seeing this, Gyarados next to it quickly stretched out its tail to snatch the bag from Golduck's hand, sprinkled it directly into the water, opened its big mouth and swallowed the energy cubes scattered nearby. Another Pokemon also hurriedly scrambled in the water. After all the Pokemon had eaten at least 1 energy cube, they all showed very comfortable smiles, and their eyes looking at Qingliu became less restrained and more intimate. Seeing that everything was almost ready, Qingliu looked at them and coughed twice. All the Pokemon's attention was immediately focused on him. I'm very sorry that I can't give each of you one, because we were chased by others and consumed a lot on the way. There are only a few energy cubes left. I have to leave now, otherwise they may affect you. Next time I will definitely bring you more. Upon hearing this, all the Pokemon became excited. However, they were not excited about Qingliu's promise to bring something next time, but that someone dared to bully their friends who they had never met before but felt like they were old friends at first sight. Haha. Roar, roar, roar. The leading Golduck and Gyarados expressed their strong dissatisfaction at the same time, and more than 20 younger brothers behind them followed to support them. For a moment, the natives of the Farewell Fountain were immediately ready for battle, and they all expressed their willingness to teach those guys a lesson. Tyrannosaurus was very happy that these strangers were willing to help Qingliu, and hurriedly thanked them. But then he couldn't help but worry. Qingliu, it's really good that they are so enthusiastic, but if they get hurt because of us, I will feel a little guilty about thanking them. Qingliu nodded and said, don't worry, it's not just you, I can do it too, so. I just need them to fire a volley to help us get rid of those miscellaneous soldiers, and we will do the rest ourselves. More than a dozen Pokemon of more than 30 levels, plus more than a dozen Pokemon of 10 or 20 levels, fired a volley of moves. Those guys from the Galaxy team certainly didn't expect that they would prepare such a big gift for them. At this time, outside the Farewell Fountain, the propellers of 6 helicopters roared, and they came straight to the location of the Farewell Fountain. Chapter 118 Surprise. Report to Captain Hansing, All nearby areas have been checked, and no trace of the target has been found for the time being. No need to look for it. Zhang, who had blue hair, said expressionlessly after hearing the report from his subordinates on the communicator, and then his eyes fell on a display in his hand without saying a word. Seeing Zhang's unhurried look, Suxing, who had a bandage on his hand, bruises on his body and a somewhat depressed spirit, could not sit still. Zhang, what are you doing? If you don't chase him, you won't be able to catch up with that kid. Huoxing, who had short orange shoulder-length hair, sneered, who made you so useless that you can't even hold back a kid whose hair hasn't even grown out yet? What did you say? Suxing was furious, and wanted to continue speaking but was interrupted by Zhang, who had been silent the whole time. Isn't it embarrassing enough? Zhang raised his head and glanced at her calmly. According to normal circumstances, the physical strength of the white dragon should be getting lower and lower, but we have been chasing for so long and have not found any trace of them. This is not normal. Maybe they were pretending to paralyze us before. Huoxing asked tentatively. No. Zhang shook his head calmly and said, no matter who it was, there was no need to do that under the circumstances at that time. Keeping us hanging will only increase the risk of accidents. So what are you thinking now? So many people were dispatched, and even confronted Miss Junsha head-on, risking being discovered, and letting that kid run away. The leader of the Red Sun will definitely be very angry. Suxing, who had a purple ball head, finally couldn't help but say something. Don't worry, they can't run away. Zhang said calmly as if he had won the game. Then he stared at the monitor in his hand, looking at the fluctuations detected by it, which were completely different from the surroundings, and took out a Poké Ball. With a flash of red light, a dark blue frog about 1.5 meters tall, with big eyes and a big mouth showing big front teeth, appeared at the hatch. The huge red poison sac on its throat grew larger and smaller with each breath. Toxic Skull Frog, use Shadow Ball on the area below. Labo. The Toxic Skull Frog responded, and with both hands gathered together, a purple energy ball surrounded by strong ghost energy shot towards the ground at a high speed. What are you doing? Just watch. As the voice fell, the shadow ball did not smash a hole in the ground as expected by Hozing. Instead, it disappeared directly after approaching as if it had never appeared. What is going on? Suizing and Hozing looked at the scene in surprise. Zhang looked as if it was just what he expected, and slowly said, according to the data we have collected, there are 3 lakes in the Sinar region, Lizzie Lake, Zinki Lake, and Juju Lake. Akram, Emrido, and Yuxi live in them respectively. All 3 of them are our targets, but in addition to these 3 lakes, there is a 4th lake that has not been confirmed because it is hidden. You mean, the place below is the 4th lake, and that kid is hiding in it? Yes, all the lakes in Sinnoh have different dimensions, and this 4th lake is no exception. Zhang continued, although I don't know if he knew this place or stumbled into it by mistake, the place where he lost his trace in the end is indeed near here. After explaining, Zhang glanced at the detector and found that there was nothing abnormal, and said in a cold voice, everyone, keep the formation and move towards the area directly below. Yes. Everyone answered in the communicator. 6 helicopters began to approach the bottom in a formation of 3 by 3. Except for Zhang, everyone held their breath, including Suxing and Huoxing. Even if the experiment just now proved that something was wrong below, if the situation was not right, the plane would definitely be destroyed and everyone would die if the plane descended at this speed. Fortunately, as the plane got closer to the ground, a buzzing sound suddenly sounded in my ears, and then the world in front of me suddenly changed as if the space was distorted. Under the strong light, a whole new world completely different from the forest and trees I saw just now appeared in front of me. The sky was clear and the air was fresh, and the mist was lingering, like a fairyland. This is the 4th lake. There is such a big place hidden. Suxing and Huoxing looked at each other, and then turned their shocked eyes to Zhang. Although the 2 of them have always been at odds, they can still distinguish between big and small things, and they are not stupid. Zhang was able to analyze the existence of this lake in such a short time, find the location accurately, and boldly implement the plan. This ability is probably far beyond him, catching up with the leader. It was no wonder that he had to lead all the major operations and let the 2 of them serve as deputies. One had to admit that the leader had a very sharp vision. Suxing was relieved. Although Zhang had a bad temper, the mission would most likely be completed smoothly with him around, making up for the failure of her previous plan. Her attitude and tone also improved a lot, Zhangxing, what should we do next? Zhangxing glanced at her calmly and said, search in a dispersed manner, don't miss any corner, and keep a record of every place. This may be a very critical note for the execution of the plan in the future. Understood. Suxing and Huoxing immediately began to assign manpower. Zhangxing looked at the lake under his feet, and a cold arc rose at the corner of his mouth. Don't think you can escape by hiding in such a place. The strength and plan of the Galaxy team are beyond your imagination. Since he joined the Galaxy team, he has been studying and improving himself with Cherry as an example, and has come all the way to become the head of the Galaxy team. As long as he is not facing the strong men of the older generation, he is confident that he can handle any situation perfectly, even now. Zhangxing believed this and did the same. Until a sound that cut through the sky sounded in the distance. This huge sound quickly attracted his attention, and Zhangxing turned his head to look at the place where the sound came from. Seeing this, his originally calm state of mind suddenly couldn't hold it anymore. His hair stood up, cold sweat broke out on his forehead, and he hurriedly shouted, everyone, get out of the way, quick. After that, Zhangxing directly released a Mookhawk, and after grabbing its claws together with a poison skull frog, the Mookhawk quickly flapped its wings and flew out. A moment later, the sound that cut through the sky appeared in front of everyone, who seemed a little confused because of Zhangxing's sudden reminder. The next second, everyone was in chaos. I saw a huge stream of light rushing towards their plane. To be precise, it was not a stream of light. It was dozens of colorful, emitting different energy auras that finally merged together. What on earth is this? Huoxing and Suxing's scalps were numb, and they quickly released their flying Pokemon and quickly jumped out of the helicopter door. The rest of the Galaxy team members who reacted slowly were in a mess. Then, Litterguang rushed into the helicopter group. Boom! The terrifying energy was completely blocked by nothing. Even the specially treated helicopter fuselage could not resist it at all. It was pierced almost a moment of contact, and then continued to rush forward unimpeded. In a moment, the 5 helicopters in the same line all exploded, and the only remaining 6th helicopter was also affected by the aftermath, spinning out of control in the air and falling to the ground. In the end, only Zhangxing, Suxing, and Huoxing, as well as 3 members of the Galaxy team who reacted faster and had flying Pokemon, landed successfully, and the others floated to the other side. What happened? What's going on with this sudden attack? Suxing and Huoxing panted heavily and roared angrily. Especially Suxing, because she had an injury on her body. The sudden violent movement directly pulled the wound, and her face was twisted in pain. Finally, they turned their eyes to Zhangxing. After all, he was the one who gave the warning in the first place, and perhaps he could know what had just happened. Zhangxing's face was very ugly at the moment. How could he know what was going on? He was just the first to discover the attack. Apart from being able to see that the attack was an attack by many Pokemon, he had no idea who was behind it, where it came from, and why it was done. Compared to his confidence and calmness a few minutes ago, the development of the situation has now far exceeded his control, and he is a little bit out of control. The attack just now was obviously aimed at them, and they were targeting the boy, so does that mean this was a trap from the beginning? Starting from the curtain gym, they deliberately created such a big commotion and even raised the gym, but the nearby residents were evacuated in advance and no one was injured. Then after defeating Jupiter, they pretended to be caught up all the way, and finally came to this place and wiped it out in one fell swoop. What a big move. If this is really what I guessed, then this courage and strategy is really chilling. Ordinary people definitely don't have such a strategy, which means that it was not a plan thought up by the boy, but someone else was behind it. Is it another competitor, or those old guys from Suzerain Island? Zhangxing's face turned ugly. No matter who it was, the current situation could be said to be very bad. But even so, he had to collect as much information as possible and report what happened here to the leader of the Red Sun. After confirming that the communicator could still be used normally, Zhangxing turned on the recording function and stood up while looking around. We have lost most of our men. It is only a matter of time before we are caught, but before that, I want to know who can do it and make the Galaxy team lose with a clear conscience. Before Zhangxing finished speaking, water began to surge on the surface of the lake, and Pokemon poked their heads out of the water and swam towards them at high speed. Then, a huge shadow emerged from the water, just when Zhangxing and others thought that a big guy was about to appear underwater. A gust of wind rose from the air, and a white dragon spread its wings and sprinted in the air at high speed to stand in front of them. On the back of the dragon, a handsome boy with a delicate face looked down at them, and his voice came along. "You guys had a lot of fun chasing me all the way, didn't you? Now, it's my turn." Chapter 119 King vs. King, General vs. General. Under the bright sunshine, Xianxing looked up at the boy on the dragon's back. After confirming with Suxing that the boy was the target of this operation, Xianxing ignored Qingliu's words. "Let the person behind you come out." Qingliu frowned when he heard this. "What do you mean?" "It's just a simple literal meaning. I know that this series of plans against the Galaxy team definitely have the shadow of certain people, and you are just a spokesperson pushed to the front by them, or to be more precise, a flag that can be discarded at any time, just like now." Xianxing maintained a calm expression while staring at Qingliu. He deliberately said such irritating words, with the purpose of making the other party angry and obtaining some information in this mood. But what he didn't expect was that after hearing his words, the other party not only didn't look angry at all, but looked at him with a very strange look. Or to be more precise, Qingliu looked at him with a look of mental retardation. Although he didn't understand what Xianxing was saying, from the content of the previous sentence, he could more or less analyze some information. "I originally thought that ideological deification was something that should only exist in novels, but I didn't expect that it would be vividly performed in front of me so soon." Qingliu sneered, and gradually said expressionlessly, "It's really rude to talk to yourself like this and make up something that doesn't exist." Xianxing heard this, frowned and was silent for a moment, then opened his mouth to launch another attack, but Qingliu's next words directly interrupted him. "Blue Eyes White Dragon, Explosive Wind Bomb." The Blue Eyes White Dragon opened its big mouth full of sharp teeth, and an energy bomb that condensed white light and electric arcs was compressed into shape and shot towards the ground. "Be careful." Suxing, who knew the fighting power of the Blue Eyes White Dragon, hurriedly reminded. Xianxing, who had already received information from Suxing, naturally would not be careless, and immediately said to the poisonous skull frog next to him, "Fight back with Shadow Ball." Labo. The poisonous skull frog pushed its hands with both hands, and the dark ghost energy shot out violently, hitting the incoming explosive wind bomb directly. The dark blue dragon energy and the dark ghost energy collided violently, and the two sides competed with each other and refused to give in. At this time, Suxing and Huoxing, as well as the other three members of the Galaxy team who successfully made an emergency landing, also took the opportunity to take out their Pokémon to join the battle. Qingliu and Blue Eyes White Dragon seemed not to see all this and did not make any move. But the next second, a terrifying telekinesis and destructive deathlight burst out from the water surface, hitting them directly in front of them, and blasted a big hole in the ground. Who? Suxing and Huoxing looked up and saw that on the edge of the farewell fountain lake, a huge Gyarados and Golduck were staring at them coldly, as if they would immediately start attacking if they dared to make any rash moves. Behind them, there were dozens of Pokémon who were also eyeing them covetously. Suxing and Huoxing looked at each other, and after confirming that they had to go all out, they immediately threw all their Pokémon and commanded more than 10 of their own Pokémon to attack the Pokémon of the farewell fountain. Fierce explosions sounded, and the battlefield was in chaos. Suxing, Huoxing and others were completely suppressed for a while. Although the farewell fountain had an advantage in level and number, they had no one to command them. At the same time, due to the living environment, they were not very aggressive, so it was difficult for them to make very threatening attacks for a while. This gave Suxing and Huoxing some time to breathe. The two turned their heads and looked at the three subordinates and said quickly, "Just do it." "Yes." The three members of the Galaxy team immediately released 3 red and white Pokémon that looked like Poké Balls floating on the water, Naughty Thunder Bombs. This is a suicide weapon that their Galaxy team secretly trained to forcibly resolve some unsolvable situations. Each of them has mastered a move with a power of up to 250 Big Bang. It stimulates its own energy to cause a big explosion, causing itself to fall into near death while attacking all Pokémon in the range, causing huge damage. Naughty Thunder Bombs, use Big Bang. The three said in unison. Then the 3 Naughty Thunder Bombs in the center of the battlefield lit up white at the same time, ready to launch a suicide attack. Suddenly, a blue light suddenly lit up, instantly binding the 3 Naughty Thunder Bombs and lifting them into the air. At the same time, the powerful wave force directly extinguished all the terrifying aura rising from them. Not far away, Lucario slowly walked over. and on the other side. Bang! With an explosion, the explosive wind bomb exploded violently, and the two energies collided and disappeared in the air. Not bad power, it is indeed very rare at your age, but that's all. Let the person behind you come out, otherwise you will lose very badly. Zhang spoke to Qingliu, but his eyes kept looking around. Qingliu ignored his words and opened the panel illustration for the poisonous skull frog. Race, Poison Frog. Classification, Poison Pokemon. Attributes, Poison. Fighting. Features, Danger Premonition. Has a stronger intuition and can detect dangerous moves of the opponent. Level 33. Exclusive moves, none. Mastered moves, Poison Needle, Provoke, Kick, Venom Blast, Rush, Shadow Ball, Dark Wave, Protect, Poison Blast. Poisonous. Race value, 490. Horsepower 83. Attack 106. Defense 65. Special attack 86. Special defense 65. Speed 85. Intimacy, 0. Status, normal. Information summary. The poison sac in its throat has a very powerful toxin. Every time the poison sac is agitated, the power of the toxin is increased. In battle, the toxin in the poison sac is transferred to the opponent through the bright red spikes on the back of its hand. Even a scratch is very dangerous. It is good at dodging attacks with its flexible and sensitive body while rushing into the opponent's arms, using the poisonous spikes to poke fiercely. After subduing the prey, it will cheer for victory. Horizontal ellipsis. Is he the strongest among the Cotters? Qingliu quickly scanned the information and finally landed on the level of Toxoplasma. Jupiter's Tank Skunk is level 30, and the Budgie's Meowth is level 31. Only the main Pokemon Toxoplasma of Zhangxing has reached the leading level of 33. For Blue Eyes White Dragon, it is very difficult to face such an opponent now, which can be seen from the attack just now that seemed to be a draw, but in fact the explosive wind bullet exploded first. On this side, in addition to Lucario who has recovered his strength, only Tyrannosaurus can fight it. But Lucario has been sent by him to protect the Pokemon in the Farewell Fountain who want to help him and don't want to leave. Qingliu, let me go. Tyrannosaurus knows the current situation, and it is also very angry and wants to make these guys look bad, so it said to Qingliu through the Poké Ball. Don't be impatient, there is no one who will use the ultimate move right at the beginning. After Qingliu calmed Tyrannosaurus, his eyes tilted slightly and looked at Blue Eyes White Dragon. Basically, you have no chance of winning, but I still want you to try. Do you have the guts? Blue Eyes White Dragon obviously didn't expect Qingliu to say that. After a moment of stunned silence, he nodded firmly. As a noble dragon, it has a strong pursuit of victory. Even if the chances are slim, it must maintain its pride and attack the enemy. Very good. Qingliu nodded with satisfaction, jumped off its back, landed opposite Zhangxing, and then said, Blue Eyes White Dragon, use Dragon Tail. Chapter 120 Dragon's Fury, 2-in-1. The Blue Eyes White Dragon turned his head and looked at his tail. The dark blue and white colors complemented each other, and the dragon energy covered layer by layer, and soon the entire tail was completely wrapped in it. The Blue Eyes White Dragon was obviously very curious about this scene, but curiosity did not affect the speed of its attack. It quickly vibrated its wings and rushed towards the poisonous skull frog on the ground. At the same time, an invisible pressure emanated from the Blue Eyes White Dragon. The poisonous skull frog on the ground, which was just about to dodge, suddenly felt an extreme discomfort all over its body, and even its movements were delayed a lot. Zhangxing naturally discovered this situation, but he did not look surprised. Is this the intimidation-like characteristic that Zhangxing mentioned? This feeling is indeed unusual, but Zhangxing calmly commanded, Poisonous Skull Frog, block it. The poisonous skull frog stretched out the bright red claws on its two arms to block in front of it, and took it hard without dodging. With its arms crossed, the dragon's tail fell. Bang! With a loud bang, the violent dragon energy suddenly expanded, and a huge force burst out from the intersection. Caw! Crack! Crack! The place where the poison frog stood was directly hit by the Blue Eyes White Dragon's tail that fell from the sky, and it was sunken. But the arm of the poison frog that was blocking in front of it remained motionless, and there was no sign of any deformation due to the heavy blow. Labo. The poison frog slightly tilted its head, and its face stretched out from the side of its crossed arms. Its brows were furrowed and its big teeth were bared, and it issued a provocation with the attitude of a master of facial expression. Poison attack. The Zhangxing voice sounded, and the poison frog raised its arm to deflect the dragon's tail. At the same time, the poison energy on its claws lingered, and it stabbed straight out. The blue-eyes white dragon quickly flapped its wings to distance itself and flew back into the air. Seeing that the attack missed, Xianxing turned his gaze to the huge blue-eyes white dragon, which was all white and had a huge body, and said, "The power of Dragon Tail is not very strong, and Suxing's intelligence did not mention that this Pokemon has used Dragon Tail. Are you hiding it deliberately, or has it just learned it?" Qingliu couldn't help but sneer when he heard this. "They mobilized all the Cotters to chase me, a rookie trainer, and they were so careful that they even knew the information about the fight in such detail. This has nothing to do with strength. If you want to achieve the great goal of Team Galactic, you need to start with every small thing that may affect the overall situation. Besides, how dare you say that you are a rookie trainer with your strength?" Xianxing looked at Qingliu and continued, "I'll give you one last chance. Call out those people behind you who want to deal with Team Galactic, otherwise this Pokemon can't protect you." Toxicula took a step forward, staring at Qingliu with a ferocious look. The blue-eyes white dragon gently swung its body and flew in front of Qingliu, facing the eyes of the poison frog with its blue eyes and glaring back without showing any weakness. But judging from the momentum, the poison frog is obviously stronger. The fact is indeed the same as Xianxing said. The blue-eyes white dragon is only level 20 now, and it can fight across 5 levels with its strong physical fitness. But even so, it can't solve the level 30 tank skunk of Suxing, let alone the current level 33 poison frog. But as he said to the blue-eyes white dragon before, he didn't fight for victory from the beginning. If he really wanted to win quickly, he just needed to let Tyrannosaurus go directly, and there was no need to spend so much time. The reason why he wanted the blue-eyes white dragon to challenge the poison frog, which was far beyond its strength limit, was to train the blue-eyes white dragon's moves. It was not the exclusive explosive wind bullet, but the move from the Pokemon world, Dragon Tail. After arranging the ambush, Qingliu let his 3 Pokemon and Lucario rest and recover their physical strength. While checking their status, he was surprised to find that there was an additional Dragon Tail in the blue-eyes white dragon's move column. As for the opportunity to learn and master it, Qingliu can only attribute it to the time when Tyrannosaurus used it in front of blue-eyes white dragon in an unconscious state. Although the proficiency and power are not very good, it can be mastered directly after watching it once. Such a talent can be called terrifying. If Team Galaxy hadn't just come, Qingliu even suspected that blue-eyes white dragon would be able to learn other moves by watching those move-learning machines a few more times. Thinking about how much hardship and loss Tyrannosaurus suffered in order to master the moves, there's really no harm without comparison. But it's good this way. It's better to learn quickly than not to learn and repeat the same mistakes. So, since you have learned it, you should try to improve your proficiency and power as much as possible to save time for mastering other moves in the future. And the best way to improve is to use it constantly and promote it through battle. Right now, Xianxing and Toxic Skullfrog are good sparring partners. Although I have told you not to talk to yourself anymore and stop fantasizing about those things, but since you don't believe it, then beat me first. Blue-eyes white dragon, use your dragon tail again. Under the sunlight, the blue-eyes white dragon hovering in the air dived again, and while approaching the ground at a high speed, it turned its body and pulled its tail out horizontally. When Xianxing saw this scene, his face suddenly became much gloomier. "If you don't listen to me when I talk to you nicely and insist on drinking a toast, then don't blame me. Anyone who may pose a threat to Team Galaxy should be eliminated." After that, Xianxing looked at Toxic Skullfrog standing next to him. "Fight with all your strength and use poison attacks." The poison Skullfrog nodded heavily, and then, under the pressure of the dragon's might that enveloped it, a hint of purple instantly appeared on its claws, and it faced the attacking dragon's tail. Bang! The dragon and ghost energies collided violently, and a huge impact force came from the point of contact. The poison Skullfrog took a step back, but the blue-eyes white dragon was shocked and flew backwards. The blue-eyes white dragon, who was completely crushed in strength for the first time, was inevitably a little surprised, and his breathing became heavy. As a noble dragon, he was suppressed in what he was good at. Under the proud heart of the blue-eyes white dragon, a trace of uncontrollable anger burst out. "This is just a warm-up." Xianxing's voice came from afar, and then a blue shadow rushed towards the blue-eyes white dragon at a very fast speed. The blue-eyes white dragon reacted quickly, twisted its body to stimulate energy, and under the drive of dragon energy, it angrily swung its dragon tail again. Bang! There was another explosion, and the Blue Eyes White Dragon was once again blown away by the attack with nearly twice the level of suppression. The poison frog sank its body, forcibly stopped the trend of retreating, and then stepped on the ground and launched another charge. This time it was faster and more aggressive. The Blue Eyes White Dragon was not very skilled in the dragon tail energy, and the poison frog had already approached and hit the Blue Eyes White Dragon in the chest with a punch. Boom! With a muffled sound, the huge force directly knocked it into the ground. The Blue Eyes White Dragon swung its tail with all its strength when it fell, using the power of its body to repel the poison frog. Don't stop, poison frog, use Shadow Ball. Blue Eyes White Dragon, explosive wind bomb. Facing the flying shadow balls, Qingliu's voice fell, and the Blue Eyes White Dragon stood in place, but did not make any movement. There was only an angry expression mixed with a trace of undisguised pain. A flash of purple energy flashed on its face. Poison state. Qingliu took out a prepared antidote, and at the same time looked at the poisonous skull frog with bared teeth and a provocative expression on its face. He thought he would be poisoned, but did not expect it to happen so soon. It seems that this guy's toxin is much more difficult to deal with than he thought. At this time, the Blue Eyes White Dragon's brain was continuously eroded by neurotoxins, and it was difficult to move, and his consciousness was gradually blurred. Roar! The Blue Eyes White Dragon instinctively roared angrily from its throat, trying to cheer itself up but to no avail, which made it feel even more powerless. At the same time, it became even angrier. It could accept the gap in strength, and it could accept failure, but it could not accept that as a noble dragon, it was defeated by a mere bit of toxin and thus lost its ability to fight. But its consciousness was becoming more and more blurred, and its control over its body was becoming weaker and weaker, and finally it fell to the ground. Such an ugly appearance generated endless rage that accumulated in the Blue Eyes White Dragon's body, and it became more and more inflated along with the weakness of its body and consciousness, as well as the pain in its body, but it was always a little short of being completely ignited. Until one attack after another came. Boom! 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 The shadow balls fired by the toxic skull frog slammed down all around, and thick smoke billowed in the explosion. Zhengxing retracted his gaze and looked at Qingliu. Even if your Pokemon has a good physique, the toxic skull frog can poison the opponent with just a touch, not to mention that it hit several times with poison. I've already told you to let those guys behind you come out. Since you don't want to, don't blame me. I'll let Poison Frog inject toxins into him and take him away. Labo. Poison Frog immediately began to move, raised the claws on the back of his hand, and walked towards Qingliu step by step. At this time, a strange sound sounded behind him. Before Zhengxing and Poison Frog turned their heads to check the situation, a ferocious and violent energy filled with raging anger rose from the position where the Blue Eyes White Dragon was. Can it still stand up? This sudden scene surprised Zhengxing a little. The toxin in the poison sac on the throat of his poison frog was strengthened by him through special methods. In addition to being more toxic than ordinary toxins, the poison will also be accompanied by a strong tingling sensation. This tingling sensation will stimulate their body and mind crazily. Those with a weak consciousness will be defeated by the pain before the neurotoxin can fully take effect. Considering that the intelligence said that this Pokemon has a good physical fitness, he specially let Poison Frog use Shadow Ball to make up for it for the sake of insurance to ensure that there is no risk. But even so, the opponent has not fallen yet. Moreover, it seemed to have used the move that was not mentioned in Zhengxing's intelligence. Looking at the energy body that first turned and moved in the air and finally turned into a ferocious dragon-shaped skeleton, Zhengxing recognized what this move was. Dragon-type move, Dragon's Fury. The move that condenses the anger of the body and mind into a shock wave to launch an attack. Although the power setting is limited, it will cause completely different damage according to the different emotions of the user. Especially in this situation where he can clearly feel the other party's anger, Zhengxing's expression suddenly became solemn. Poisonous Skull Frog, use Guard. The green protective shield quickly covered the poisonous Skull Frog. The next second, the dark blue energy body in the shape of a bone dragon in the sky suddenly stretched out in all directions, and a wave of air broke the surrounding smoke and dust into pieces. Then, it dived. The terrifying pressure mixed with anger flashed at an incredibly fast speed, and in an instant it descended from the air and blasted the poisonous skull frog on the ground. The violent energy burst out instantly, and the skeleton-shaped dragon-shaped energy opened its mouth and bit directly on the shield formed by guard. Boom! The ground trembled, and the wind blew. The overflowing energy blew holes in the ground. The poisonous skull frog gritted its teeth and held up the protective shield. Zzz. The sound of energy explosions came one after another, attacking and defending, and it was difficult to tell who would win for a while. Until, after the overflowing dragon's wrath destroyed the ground where the poisonous skull frog stood, it actually drilled back from underground and attacked the protective shield with the dragon's wrath outside. The strongest defense often collapses from the inside, and it is indeed the case now. Kaka! A settling crisp sound rang out, and Zhanxing's face changed. A crack appeared on the top of the protective shield, and the poisonous skull frog couldn't help but look over. But as soon as it raised its head, a certain position in front of it broke open again in the next second. Then, more and more opponents were shattered, and a moment later the protective shield was riddled with holes. The poisonous skull frog was ready to give up and use its speed to quickly leave the area. It was very fast, but the dragon's wrath was even faster. Almost at the moment when the protective shield it was guarding was shattered, before it could take a step, the raging dragon-shaped energy body came crashing down and accurately hit the back of the poisonous skull frog. Labo! The stinging pain came from the back, and the poisonous skull frog screamed. Then, the energy completely submerged its surroundings, and smoke and dust rose into the sky. Qingliu stood not far away, watching this scene quietly. Just now, when he saw the three words Dragon's Fury appearing in the Blue Eyes White Dragon's move column, Qingliu also did not expect such a situation to happen. Learning the dragon tail so quickly is already a very good talent, and now he has mastered a new move without a teacher. This surprised Qingliu, and he couldn't help but think seriously about the talent of the Blue Eyes White Dragon in his mind. In theory, the Blue Eyes White Dragon should have a high probability of learning moves as slowly as Tyrannosaurus, but the reality is not only not the case, but the opposite. It is obviously the same situation, but there are two completely different phenomena, which shows that there is a variable in a certain link. Qingliu thought of the meteorites in Vale City, and also thought of the information that appeared on the panel when exploring those meteorites, as well as the brown stones wrapped in the legendary white stone. In other words, Arceus's power affected Blue Eyes White Dragon, causing it to be more in line with the identity of Pokémon than Tyrannosaurus's smuggling. This explanation should be the closest to the current situation. But no matter what, this is not a bad thing for Blue Eyes White Dragon. On the contrary, it can help it catch up with Tyrannosaurus more quickly and not be left too far behind. After sorting out the thoughts in his mind, Qingliu looked back at the center of the battlefield. After releasing the Dragon's Fury, the Blue Eyes White Dragon was already shaky under the dual pressure of physical strength and poisoning, but it insisted on not falling down. Qingliu walked forward, sprayed the antidote and took out the Poké Ball. Okay, come in and rest first, you have done far more than expected. Blue Eyes White Dragon did not refuse or agree, and his eyes were fixed on the direction where the Dragon's Fury fell. Until he saw the figures of Toxic Skull Frog and Zhanxing walking out of the smoke, a trace of disappointment flashed across Qingliu's pupils. Then, he slowly fell down. Seeing this, Qingliu directly pressed the switch of the Poké Ball and put it in. There is no need to ask so much of yourself. It is already very good to be able to make such an attack across such a large level gap. Then Qingliu raised his head and looked at the opposite side. There was a wisp of black smoke on the back of Toxic Skull Frog, but it still remained standing. Its huge eyes seemed to be congested and stared at Qingliu. Obviously, the Dragon's Fury caused damage to it, but because of the huge level gap, the damage was far below its tolerance limit. Zhanxing said with a gloomy face, just like Suxing said, "You are indeed not simple, but this is all, just surrender." Chapter 121 White Dragon defeats Tyrannosaurus Rex. Is the battle not over yet? Qingliu put away the Poké Ball of Blue Eyes White Dragon and then took out the second Poké Ball. You don't think that Blue Cotton Bird can play any role, do you? Zhanxing looked at Qingliu's actions and said lightly, "Don't waste time with meaningless resistance. No matter who is behind you or what plans you have against Team Galaxy, as long as you're caught, all problems will be solved. Toxic Frog, inject him with toxins." Labo. Toxic Frog took a step forward and approached Qingliu's position. Looking at the increasingly close Toxic Frog, Qingliu gently pressed the switch, and the Poké Ball quickly changed from the size of a ping-pong ball to the size of a baseball. At the same time, he slowly said, You don't think that Blue Eyes White Dragon is my last Pokemon, do you? I remember that your previous goal was to capture me and find out what was used to destroy the Curtain Gym, right? Zhengxing's face changed slightly when he heard this. The information provided by Suxing mentioned that the other party had used 3 Pokemon, namely the White Dragon Pokemon whose identity had not been confirmed just now, a Bluebird that did not seem to be of high level, and the Lucario in the Curtain Gym. Although the combat power of the White Dragon Pokemon was somewhat beyond expectations and caused damage to the Poison Frog, it had completely lost its combat power at this moment, and Lucario was restrained by Suxing and Huaxing and did not come over. Now only the Bluebird has not appeared. In the dangerous situation of being chased at that time, it should not be possible to hide any Pokemon. Even if this series of operations were a conspiracy to track them to be fooled, there was no need to take such a big risk of being almost caught up several times. But hearing Qingliu's words, and thinking of the Curtain Gym that had disappeared on the ground in Curtain City, Zhengxing felt a sense of uneasiness in his heart for no reason. Do Pokemon with such strong destructive power really exist? Or is it really necessary for people who have such powerful Pokemon to play these tricks with them? Zhengxing thought this was unlikely, but no matter what, the battle had to be ended quickly. Toxic Skull Frog, rush forward and use Poison Attack. The Poison Frog heard the solemnity in Zhengxing's voice and immediately burst out with all its strength. Bang! The ground was directly stepped on and cracked and sank, and the speed of the Poison Frog, which took advantage of the force, suddenly skyrocketed and rushed towards Qingliu at a rapid speed. It can be seen that even after being hit head-on by the Blue Eyes White Dragon's Fury, its speed did not seem to be affected too much. However, no matter how fast it moves, it is not as fast as Qingliu pressing the switch of the Poké Ball. Ling. Along with a crisp sound, a red light flashed out of the Poké Ball, and then it suddenly expanded and turned into a mountain-like figure that appeared in front of Qingliu. Seeing this, the Poison Frog, whose attack path was blocked, did not care about anything and directly changed its target. While the poison sac in its throat was rapidly surging, it raised the bright red sharp claws on the back of its hand covered with poison energy and launched an attack. It has absolute confidence in its own speed and strength. Even when facing the Blue Eyes White Dragon, which also has high speed and great strength, it can directly suppress it on these 2 levels. Even if it was at its worst, there were still toxins transported through the poison sacs on the sharp claws. These toxins were so strong that they didn't even need to break the defense. Just contact would work. This time, it wouldn't give the opponent a chance to breathe like before. As long as the attack hit, the opponent would be greeted by its thunder attack. With such confidence, the Poison Frog quickly rushed into the arms of the Pokemon in the red light, and stabbed straight out with its sharp claws. The whirring sound of the wind sounded in its ears, and the Poison Frog watched its attack get closer and closer to the opponent. Until it was completely close, and it could even feel the touch of the red light of the Poké Ball. A ferocious expression appeared on the exposed front teeth of the Poison Frog. The next second, the sound of the wind in the ear seemed to suddenly turn from a spring breeze to a howling gale on a summer night, and suddenly became countless times louder. Then, bang! A terrifying force hit its face, without giving it any time to react. Even the expression on its face still maintained the confidence that the attack was about to hit, and its body flew out directly. After gliding in the air for about 10 meters, the body of the poisonous skull frog began to flip over. Bang! 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 After a series of close contacts with the ground, the poisonous skull frog's expression was dull as its head finally smashed into the broken ground. It was a little bit unable to react to what had just happened. The attack was clearly about to hit, but it was it that was knocked away in the next second? Even Zhengxing, who was standing next to it, was a little confused at this moment. If the poisonous skull frog may not have seen clearly what happened because the distance between the two was too close, but as he was standing not far away and observing the battle situation all the time, he did not see clearly what happened, then it already showed the seriousness of the problem. I only vaguely saw the action of raising the arm, but I don't know when the attack was launched and what kind of attack was used. Zhengxing's expression became solemn, his eyes fixed on the hill-like figure standing in front of Qingliu. A Pokemon in the form of a dinosaur with blue stripes on its yellow skin, a strong body, and sharp teeth and claws all over its body. A Pokemon that is not on the information provided by Suxing, and it is another big dragon-type guy. The white dragon just now was already quite large, But the one that appeared now, whether in height, size or momentum, far exceeded the previous one. Just by looking at it, Zhengxing could feel a strong sense of oppression from the other party's body. This sense of oppression is different from the intimidation characteristic of the white dragon. It is more like an aura formed by its own strength. It is more vague and more elusive. But Zhengxing is very sure that the big guy in front of him is definitely not at the same level of combat power as the white dragon just now. This is a very powerful guy. Combined with what Qingliu said when releasing this Pokemon, Zhengxing quickly said, Toxic Skull Frog, use Shadow Ball continuously. Labo. The poisonous Skull Frog, which had just pulled its brain out of the ground, stood up quickly, clasped its hands together with an angry roar, and the ghost energy quickly condensed into 5 dark energy balls. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. The 5 shadow balls rushed forward and shot towards each other at an extremely fast speed. Zhengxing stared at it intently at this moment, trying to see the opponent's movements clearly. But as the shadow ball approached, the dinosaur still stood there without any movement. Qingliu's voice did not sound until it had flown to a distance of less than 1 or 2 meters in front of him. Tyrannosaurus, hit back directly. As soon as the voice fell, Tyrannosaurus raised his right arm with spikes across his left chest, and with a completely head-on attitude, he swung it in the opposite direction towards the 5 shadow balls. Woohoo! Under Zhengxing's incredulous gaze, Tyrannosaurus quickly swung his arm and hit the 5 shadow balls with a whistling wind. Bang! The first one to be hit was directly smashed up just at the moment it touched Tyrannosaurus' arm, and a burst of black smoke swirled around it. The remaining 4 shadow balls returned at a terrifying speed that was twice as fast as when they came, and shot towards the poisonous skull frog 6-8000 words after 6 p.m. Chapter 122, Precision Strike for the Poor and Firepower Coverage for the Rich. Zhengxing could understand that the opponent could dodge the attack, or block it easily. After all, the feeling emanating from this Pokemon made him treat it with caution. But he didn't expect Qingliu's Pokemon to be so simple and violent. He casually used his arm to explode the shadow ball and hammered the rest back. What kind of monster is this? Looking at the shadow ball that shot back, Zhengxing hurriedly said, Toxic Skull Frog, use guard. Buzz! A low voice sounded, and the green protective shield formed by guard quickly protected the Toxic Skull Frog inside to block its attack. Bang! 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 4 consecutive shots hit the protective shield. Even if guard was used to resist, the impact of the shadow ball with faster speed and power still pushed the Toxic Skull Frog inside the protective shield back, and its feet stepped on the ground to leave deep grooves. Toxic Skull Frog, Wave of Evil. Zhengxing gave an order, and a terrifying force field emitting a ferocious aura was compressed between Toxic Skull Frog's hands, turning into a dark energy ball and shooting at Tyrannosaurus. Since the solid attack will be opened, then change the idea and use energy-based moves. Zhengxing does not believe that the Wave of Evil will be directly resisted. Qingliu really can't let Tyrannosaurus resist. There is no need to do something that is thankless. Moreover, through the previous attack, he already has a rough range of Tyrannosaurus's physical strength and power in his mind. Before, Tyrannosaurus at level 23 could already jump 5 levels to fight and easily win. Now it has reached level 27, and it has activated the Earth Greymon form and can smash Toxic Skull Frog's Shadow Ball. Its defense and strength should be around level 33 of the same combat power. Next, it is time to find an opportunity to test the speed of Tyrannosaurus after all 30 points of the race value are added to the speed ability value. Greymon, Super Flame. The sturdy Greymon stomped heavily on the ground, and the flames in his mouth condensed into a huge fireball and then burst out violently, colliding with a flying evil wave. Bang! The energy of the flame and the standpoint exploded, and a cloud of dust rose. But the poisonous skull frog seemed not to feel it, and raised his hand to use the evil wave again in the smoke. Explosions sounded one after another, and the airflow stirred the smoke and dust, making the center of the battlefield more turbid and the vision worse. But even so, Zhengxing still had no intention of stopping, and continued to command the poisonous skull frog to attack. Continuously use the evil wave and venom impact. Labo. The standpoint of the evil system and the corrosive venom seemed to not consume physical strength, all flew into the smoke and dust, trying to suppress the Greymon at once. Seeing this scene, Qingliu couldn't help but sneer. I have to say that using moves to consume and test the opponent when you are not sure of whose strength is indeed a good method, but it's a pity that you have chosen the wrong target. In terms of covering attacks with moves, Digimon is second to none. As long as you are not hungry, you can use moves at will. You should know that Agumon, who was only level 12 at the time, could fire more than 10 small flames in a row to fry fish in the river. Now he has not only evolved into Tyrannosaurus, but also used the energy of Sad Violence and Farewell Fountain to activate the fighting will of Earth Tyrannosaurus. Qingliu doesn't know where its limit is. It's just right. In addition to speed and strength, let's take a look at the degree of increase in Tyrannosaurus' physical strength. Tyrannosaurus, let these two guys see what firepower coverage is. In the billowing smoke and dust, Tyrannosaurus did not respond, but Xianxing and Poison Frog's nerves had already unknowingly tense up. Because a huge fireball with a diameter comparable to Poison Frog's height appeared in the field of vision. Even though there was still a long distance in the middle, Xianxing could feel a wave of heat coming towards him. No, why is there such a big difference in power between the same move? Xianxing said to himself. The power was obviously not that strong when he attacked the evil wave just now. Even if he was holding back, he couldn't have held back to this extent. But soon, Xianxing found the reason. Because it was not a single fireball, but a densely packed fireball. A glance showed that there were about 20 of them. And what was completely different from the continuous attack of the poisonous skull frog just now was that these 20 fireballs were just like spitting out in an instant, attacking almost without dead angles, leaving no room for escape. If the poisonous skull frog could fly, it would be fine, but it didn't have that ability. The flames were burning, the temperature was rising, and the super flames were also rapidly shortening the distance. Xianxing felt a dry mouth at this moment, opened his throat which felt a little dry and said, "Hold on." The green protective shield protected the poisonous skull frog to block the incoming fireballs. Xianxing forgot how many times he had used the hold move today, and he gradually forgot when he had used it so frequently last time. The only thing that is certain is that as long as it is used at a high frequency, it means that it must be in a very dangerous situation. Xianxing ran back and distanced himself from the battlefield. The next second, boom, boom, boom. After the fireballs hit hold, they quickly broke apart, turning into dots of flames and sparks that fell all over the ground, but this did not mean the end. Because there were too many fireballs. Just over 10 fireballs exploded, and the area near where the poisonous skull frog stood was turned into a piece of red soil. The ground even cracked into several hideous holes. The protective shield had been blown to pieces at this moment, with only a few remnants still holding on. The poisonous skull frog inside stood on tiptoe from time to time to ease the extremely hot soles of its feet that felt from stepping on the ground. There are still 6 fireballs left. Xianxing raised his head and glanced at the remaining fireballs, and began to issue orders, and the poisonous skull frog moved upon hearing the sound. Using speed to dodge 2 fireballs, Shadow Ball and Evil Wave each destroyed one, and facing the last 2 fireballs that were almost touching the body of the poison frog, Xianxing quickly said, "Use poison attack." The purple poison energy was stimulated on the spikes of his left and right hands, and then he blasted the 2 fireballs on the left and right at the same time. Bang! Bang! At the moment of energy collision, the 2 super flames exploded at the same time, but the sparks that splashed like fireworks enveloped the poison frog. The moment the sparks touched the skin, the poison frog's body suddenly made a hissing sound of high temperature burning. Labo! The poison frog's facial expression instantly twisted, and it unconsciously let out a cry of pain and half knelt on the ground. Seeing this scene, Xianxing quietly breathed a sigh of relief, and a trace of lingering fear appeared on his face. This Pokemon can actually use more than 20 moves continuously without interruption. Such a situation is simply unheard of. Fortunately, all of them have been blocked now. Even if Toxic Skull Frog is injured, Xianxing can accept it. Such continuous use is definitely a big burden on physical strength, so it's time for me to attack. Xianxing took out 3 Poké Balls from his pocket and pressed the amplification switch. He decided to win by numbers. The strength of Qingliu's last Pokemon has far exceeded his expectations. If he continues to fight alone, he is not sure of winning. In the end, he may not only fail to find those people behind Qingliu who can threaten the Galaxy team, but also fail to catch Qingliu, resulting in the failure of all tasks. Anything can be sacrificed, whether it's reputation or Pokemon, even my own life, but the great plan of the Red Sun leader cannot be disturbed in any way. Xianxing took a deep breath, adjusted his emotions, and then prepared to throw the Poké Ball. But suddenly, Qingliu's crisp voice rang out in the quiet space at this moment. Greymon, use Super Blast. The next second, a breeze blew by, and the fiercely burning flames made a whoosh sound when they were waving in the wind. Zhengxing once again felt a very familiar burning breath. This made Zhengxing frown, and he quickly raised his head to look at the place where the sound and breath came from. Seeing this, the mentality that had just been adjusted could not hold back again. In the smoke and dust that had gradually dissipated, a super huge fireball like the sun accumulated in the mouth of Greymon, and it rose into the air again in a visual that seemed to distort the space. Then, at a speed exceeding the speed of the more than 20 super flames just now, it burst towards the location of the poisonous skull frog. What the hell? Even Zhengxing, who always kept calm at all times, couldn't help but burst out with swear words at this moment. He couldn't understand why he could launch another attack without stopping to breathe in the middle after just creating such a terrifying continuous attack. And, it seems that the power of this move is much stronger than the previous ones. Labo. When the poison skull frog saw this scene, the provocative expression on its face froze at this moment. The tingling sensation from time to time on its body was still telling it how powerful these attacks were. But what really made them unable to suppress their shock was the voice of Qingliu again, after launching a giant fireball. Tyrannosaurus, use continuously, Super Blast. I'm still in the company, and a leader came to complain and I couldn't leave. This chapter was all written by recalling what I wrote before. I'm really convinced. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 123, Hard Power Overwhelms. One wave has not yet subsided, another wave rises. When Zhengxing saw that Tyrannosaurus really began to condense the second giant fireball almost without any hindrance after Qingliu's voice fell, he immediately threw out the 3 Poké Balls in his hand. The fireball poison frog was already very difficult to deal with just now. If he continued to fight against this obviously stronger attack, there would be only one left. Ling, ling, ling. With 3 crisp opening sounds, 3 Pokémon appeared in the red light. Mook's eagle with a killer hairstyle, the bronze mirror monster that looked like a mirror, and the yellow-colored brawler holding a soup spoon in his hand. Bronze mirror monster, Mook's eagle, poison frog, use defend, brawler will add a light wall to everyone. Zhengxing quickly issued an order, and the 4 Pokémon immediately took action. Bronze mirror monster and Mook's eagle blocked the front, and poison frog stood in the middle. The 3 Pokémon quickly lit up green protective shields around their bodies. Puff. The last one, Yongjira, raised the soup spoon in his right hand, and blue light shone on his pupils and the spoon. Psychic energy gushed out, condensing into a huge transparent wall outside the protective shields of the 3 Pokémon. Light wall, a psychic move, can offset the damage of some special attack moves for a period of time. At this time, the first Super Blast came. Crack. After just a moment of resistance, the light wall shattered under the attack, and then a hot breath hit the 3 green protective shields. Chi. The high temperature burned all around, and the expressions of the Mookhawk and the bronze mirror monster at the front were extremely solemn, and the poison skull frog, who had already experienced the power of the fireball, held his breath and dared not relax at all. Yongjira kept releasing light walls in the safe area to strengthen the defense. After blocking for nearly 10 seconds, the power of the 4 Pokémon was gathered and the energy of the Super Blast was finally consumed. Before they could catch their breath, the second Super Blast came. Then, the third one came. The 4 Pokémon were like they were facing a formidable enemy, and they quickly exploded to resist with all their strength. On the other side, the flames in Tyrannosaurus' mouth expanded and compressed from time to time, and the 4th super explosion had already condensed. Qingliu interrupted and said, "That's enough. There's no need to continue." Tyrannosaurus turned around and looked at Qingliu in confusion. "How many times do you think you can use your current physical strength limit?" Qingliu asked. Tyrannosaurus thought carefully for a moment, stretched out his claws with only 3 fingers, put away one of them and made a 2, but soon raised the bent finger again. "You mean, you can continue to fight after 5 times, but you will be exhausted after 6 times." Seeing Tyrannosaurus nod, Qingliu nodded. Compared with the previous 3 times, it can be said that it has doubled now. From this, We can imagine how terrifying the improvement brought by Tyrannosaurus is. Thinking of this, Qingliu opened the panel illustration and scanned the 3 new Pokémon on the opposite side. The bronze mirror monster is level 30, Yongjira is level 30, and Muko is level 32. The levels are not low, but they are limited to this. The 3 Galaxy Team Cotters in front of them, whether 1v1 or 1v3, can no longer be regarded as equal test subjects, so there is no need to continue the test. Greymon, end the battle. Understood. Greymon responded in a very low voice, and then turned to look at the enemies who were resisting the 3rd super explosion. The muscle lines on the thick thighs slowly emerged, and the huge claws pierced the ground and stepped deeply into it. Then the muscles instantly exerted force, raising a gust of wind, and the whole body shot out like a cannonball. When Xiangxing felt the whistling wind in front of him and realized that Qingliu had launched another attack, Greymon had already arrived in front of the light wall set by Yongjira. A figure with a height of 6 meters and a body as big as a hill covered with the weapons appeared in the field of vision. At this distance, the sense of oppression and suffocation instantly came to the face. At this time, the 4 Pokémon were concentrating on defending the last Super Blast. They didn't react to the Tyrannosaurus that suddenly appeared in front of them. Even Mukahawk, who had the fastest speed and reaction, was stunned for a while. Quick! Before he could say anything, Tyrannosaurus had already made a move. With a 3rd Super Blast penetrating the light wall and exhausting the defensive power, the orange light quickly covered the claws. With a swing of Tyrannosaurus, it grabbed the protective shield of the bronze mirror monster heavily. Crack! A crack appeared clearly on the top of the bronze mirror monster's head. This scene made the bronze mirror monster's eyes widen immediately, and at this time, Tyrannosaurus's claws fell for the 2nd time. Bang! A more terrifying force than before smashed down on its head, accompanied by a dull sound, and the entire protective shield shattered. The bronze mirror monster was too late to be shocked at this time. It knew that it could not avoid the attack of Tyrannosaurus with its speed. If it did not react, it might be the next one to be shattered. Xiangxing had time to speak at this time, and he spoke quickly. Iron Wall. Hold on. A thick metallic luster flashed, and at the same time an inexplicable aura enveloped his whole body. Steel-type moves, Iron Wall. Normal-type moves, hold on. One to improve defense, the other to force his consciousness. This is the most resistant method Xiangxing can think of. He doesn't expect that the hasty counterattack of the bronze mirror monster can repel Tyrannosaurus. That is simply unrealistic. He only needs to withstand 1 round of attacks and leave the rest to other Pokémon. As his fastest one, Mukahawk has already flapped its wings quickly, exuding an unstoppable momentum and rushing towards Tyrannosaurus. The poison attack on the claws of the poisonous skull frog and the psychic energy shot by Yongjira formed a triangle to lock Tyrannosaurus in the middle. Tyrannosaurus seemed not to see this, raised his arms, and after the flames instantly wrapped around his claws, he used the flame fist to hit the bronze mirror monster heavily. Bang! The mirrored surface with a metallic luster of an iron wall did not have any effect, and it fell to the ground directly like a dent. At this time, poison attack, mental shock, and a violent collision in the air had already hit. Tyrannosaurus quickly turned and squatted, swung its sharp claws at the poison attack, wrapped its claws with flaming fists and grabbed the mental shock, and as for Mukahawk, Tyrannosaurus chose to use its head to block it. 1 against 3, not afraid at all. The 3 Pokémon were immediately furious when they saw this. Even Xiangxing's breathing became a little heavier. No matter how strong he has just released so many powerful moves, and even the most abundant physical strength will definitely be consumed. But in this situation, he still puts on such a posture. Isn't it a bit too arrogant? There is one more update to end the story of Team Galaxy, a little later. Chapter 124, Absolute Speed and Power, Team Galaxy retreats. But soon, his breathing became heavier because he found that even though he used the hold-on skill, the bronze mirror monster could not hold on after being attacked, and fainted and lost its fighting ability. What really made his heart almost stop was the main battlefield. Under the full force attack of the 3 Pokémon, when the 4 figures intertwined in an instant, 3 collisions sounded almost at the same time. Bang! Boom! Tyrannosaurus used the fighting skills learned from Lucario. Its sharp claws rotated along the arm of the poisonous skull frog to block the attack, and slapped the body of the poisonous skull frog, smashing it into a big tree on the side. Then, a blazing flame ignited on the flaming fist, confronting the incoming mental shock head-on, and the 2 forces were deadlocked. Facing the Mook's eagle above his head, Tyrannosaurus simply adjusted the angle of his body slightly so that the part covered with the brown shells could hide it. Mook's eagle, known as the suicide bird, naturally had no hesitation about this. The head is a weak point, and as long as it hits, it may even defeat the opponent directly. Then, he gathered all his energy and rammed Tyrannosaurus on the head. Bang! In just a moment of contact, Mook's face changed. Even though the skull is usually a very hard part, this touch was a bit too much. But once the arrow is shot, it is too late. Everyone who uses it agrees that the hardness of Tyrannosaurus's digialloy base is good. Mook's full-strength ramming is like an egg hitting a stone. The reaction force rebounds all on himself, and the terrifying force makes him lose consciousness and fall from the air. Then, Tyrannosaurus turned his attention to the last one, Yongjira. He took a step forward, resisting the mental shock, and moved quickly, causing the ground to shake and rushing to Yongjira. He didn't give Yongjira any time to react, and slapped him aside with one claw. At this point, the bronze mirror monster crawled on the ground, Mook Eagle knocked himself unconscious, and Yongjira hung on a tree on the side. Only the poisonous skull frog stood up again in trembling, staring at Tyrannosaurus fiercely. And less than 10 seconds had passed. After dealing with all the enemies, Tyrannosaurus slowly turned around and looked at Xianxing with a murderous look. Xianxing couldn't help but take 2 steps back. At this moment, there were only 2 words in his mind: monster. A real monster. If he had only doubted when he saw Tyrannosaurus before, then at this moment he already had an idea in his mind. This Pokemon in front of him was most likely the root cause of the drastic changes in the Curtain Gym. Perhaps there was still a big gap between the destructive power generated by the previous battle and the current situation of the Curtain Gym, but there was a high probability that his strength was not enough and he did not let this monster show its full power. Perhaps such an idea was sad, but the possibility was the greatest. A sense of sadness surged in Xianxing's heart. I've been training hard, training to squeeze out my potential, but I didn't expect there's still such a big gap between me and the real monsters. Chief Cherry, I failed your trust. But, Team Galaxy's great plan won't end here. Xianxing looked at Qingliu, took out 2 round objects from his hand, and shouted loudly to a distance, Huoxing. Suxing. Understood. Huoxing and Suxing were also paying attention to the battle here. When they saw Tyrannosaurus defeated all of Xianxing's Pokemon like cutting melons and vegetables, they were shocked. Xianxing, the strongest among the Cotters, was in this situation. Wouldn't it be even worse for them? So, now they can only choose to retreat. The 2 then took out a naughty thunder bomb that had accumulated a big bang. The shock wave formed by the terrifying power spread out instantly. Even though it was quickly blocked by Lucario using the power of Wave Guide, it caused a chaos. Taking this opportunity, Suxing and Xianxing quickly said, Tank Skunk, Mud Bomb, Catkin, Shadow Ball. The 2 Pokemon reacted at the same time and launched an attack. Tyrannosaurus frowned immediately. Because the target they chose to attack was not Tyrannosaurus, but Aoyagi, who was standing not far away. Tyrannosaurus had to quickly return to help and intercept 2 moves on the way. At this moment, all the members of Team Galaxy took out a round object and smashed it to the ground. Bang! The round object broke apart the moment it touched the ground, and a burst of black smoke mixed with a pungent smell overflowed, soon covering a large area nearby. The Pokemon in the farewell fountain smelled this smell, and immediately ran towards the location of the lake as if they had encountered something extremely disgusting, and Lucario was forced to cover his nose and retreat. Woo woo woo. The sound of the propeller spinning rapidly suddenly sounded overhead. I saw a helicopter slowly appearing at the place where the farewell fountain was connected to the outside, and then quickly dived into the smoke and flew a circle, and then headed straight for the exit. Seeing this, Tyrannosaurus opened his mouth and held back the smell in the air, with super flame accumulating in his mouth. No need. Qingliu waved his hand and said, they obviously have a plan in preparation, don't waste your energy. But they have sent so many people. If we don't deal with them, then... Tyrannosaurus hesitated. Qingliu looked at the helicopter flying at high speed above his head, his eyes fell on the black smoke, and explained, these smokes seem to have a strong irritation to Pokemon. Lucario's wave power can't penetrate the smoke. Even if your super flame can fly over, it is not powerful enough to shoot them down. Tyrannosaurus heard this and found that the size of the super flame in his mouth was indeed much smaller than before, and he waved his hand to drive away the smoke in front of him. At this time, The helicopter also rushed into the entrance of the space distortion. What a pity. There is nothing to regret. It is not our opponent now, and it will be even less of an opponent in the future. Moreover, even if it leaves, it doesn't mean that it can't be used. Qingliu glanced around. The 4 Pokémon of Xianxing had been taken away by him. There was not much left around except for the wreckage of the helicopter. However, it was not that there was nothing left. Qingliu took a step and walked to a meadow. He bent down and picked up a black thing that looked like headphones from it. If I remember correctly, this is their communicator. Qingliu put it on his ear. Zizzy zizzy zizzy. After the noisy sound of electricity, a female voice came from the other side. Captain Xianxing, may I ask what happened? Please reply if you receive it. Qingliu did not speak, and the other party repeated it again when he saw no reply. Captain Xianxing, may I ask what happened? Please reply if you receive it. Qingliu continued to remain silent until he saw that the other party was about to repeat it indefinitely. Then he coughed twice and said slowly, I want to talk to your leader directly. Captain Xianxing, you are finally, No, who are you? Qingliu also repeated, I want to talk to your leader directly. The girl on the other end of the communicator refused again, and her voice became louder, but she was interrupted by the voice on the other end just halfway through. Qingliu waited quietly. A few seconds later, a low, magnetic and recognizable voice sounded. I am the leader of Team Galaxy. Nice to meet you, entrepreneur Mr. Cherry. Hearing Qingliu calling out his name directly, the other side seemed to fall into silence. After a long time, Cherry's voice sounded again. I didn't expect Mr. Qingliu to know my identity. I am also a little surprised that you know my name. Qingliu was also a little surprised. Theoretically speaking, he is still an illegal resident, and even if the Galaxy team checked his file information, it should be blank. In the communicator, Cherry's voice sounded again. Qingliu, 14 years old, his hometown is Random Town in the Sinnoh region. When he was a child, he ran into the mountains with a group of long-tailed monsters and disappeared. He was found in Random Ruins 2 months ago, and passed a Lost Tower trial in Random Town a week ago. He was rated as the most outstanding trainer in Random Town in the past 10 years. Hearing Qi reading out his biographical information word by word in a very serious manner, Qingliu's facial features gradually twisted into a ball. Which TM guy directly skipped over him and gave him a watered-down household registration. This is a bit too much. Although it looks serious, the technique of forging the file is really poor. After a simple comment, Qi asked, where are Zhenzing and the others? They ran away. After learning the result, Qi paused for a moment and then skipped the topic directly. At the same time, the decibel of his deep voice began to rise. Mr. Qingliu, from the Random Ruins and the meteorite crater in Vale City, I think you often hang out in such places. You should have a certain understanding of the myths of the Sinnoh region, right? Then you should also know how the world is now. Stop. Qingliu interrupted directly, I'm not interested in your plan or anything like that, and I'm not interested in joining the Galaxy team. I didn't let your men go back to let them become the cats and dogs that harass me all day long in the future. Qi's voice also returned to its previous state at this moment. What do you want? 3 things. First, make your men disappear from my side in the future. Second, complete my identity information, as long as it is not too outrageous. Third, do not come to the 4th lake to disturb the Pokemon here. There is nothing you want here. The first and second are no problem, but the third one. Qingliu interrupted again before Qi finished speaking. Qi, I am not discussing with you. I am just informing you, if I knew that your people appeared in this place, the Alliance would come to you the next day to bring you warmth. Perhaps you will think that I am not important enough, but if Miss Sirona comes forward, I think things will be somewhat different. Qi, who is on the other end of the communicator, heard this and was silent for a moment. The third thing is no problem, I will help you deal with your file information, and even help you suppress the matter of the curtain gym. But correspondingly, I also hope that you will not deliberately interfere with my actions in the future. Hearing Qi's words, Qingliu raised a curve at a corner of his mouth. Then I wish us a happy cooperation. Yet, after hanging up the communicator, the female assistant beside him hesitated for a moment and asked, Qi leader, even if he knows Miss Sirona, it should be a casual acquaintance. It is impossible for him to investigate you as a philanthropic entrepreneur because of this? Do you want us to contact the Alliance to deal with his identity issue first? Qi did not speak, but looked at the information about Qingliu in his hand. There was a very conspicuous message on it saying suspected of meeting with Sirona in the wild and winning, which may not mean that the two have any special relationship, but Sirona will definitely attach great importance to each other. Because, even if the traces have been severely damaged, after careful investigation and guessing the result of the battle, Sirona is likely to lose. For a trainer who can defeat her and whose identity and Pokemon are all mysterious, Sirona will definitely pay a lot of attention to him, whether in terms of trainer identity or gender. This attention is a complete threat. Chapter 125 Farewell and Goodbye. The Fountain of Farewell. Tyrannosaurus sat carefree in the water, half of his body immersed in the lake. Bluebird stood on Tyrannosaurus's horn, chirping and shouting. Blue Eyes White Dragon quietly crawled by the water, chewing energy cubes very comfortably. Lucario sat next to Qingliu, staring blankly at the lake. Although Tyrannosaurus had absorbed a lot of energy from the spring water before, with a continuous supply of ghosts, although the purity of the energy in the water was not as good as when it first came, it was better than the healing spray for restoring physical strength and injuries. So before leaving, Qingliu asked them to use the environment here to recover as much as possible to avoid leaving any minor problems. Splash! A sound of stirring the water surface sounded. Under my feet, the natives of the Fountain of Farewell swam by, and from time to time, they suddenly poked their heads out of the water with a mischievous attitude and splashed water towards the shore. Qingliu threw some dry food from his bag into the distance, causing them to scramble for it. Quack, quack. A Acidic floating on the water, thinking about its life, was knocked over. After a delay of half a minute, it reacted and kept calling out to the retreating figures. Seeing this, Qingliu couldn't help but laugh. Since feeding them the new food of energy cubes and experiencing a battle together, the intimacy of these simple-minded Pokemon towards him has skyrocketed, basically reaching around 60. For a human who has been with him for less than half a day, this is a very good number. But it was not them that surprised Qingliu. Qingliu turned his eyes and fell on the Lucario next to him, quickly scanning the panel illustration. Race, Lucario, Intimacy, 45 from 10 points at the beginning, to 0 points later, and then to 45 points now. This is the first time Qingliu has seen such a large fluctuation. However, this is also inevitable. Lucario felt Qingliu's gaze, slowly turned his head, and looked at him with a confused look. Human, you won't go back on what you said before, will you? When forcing Lucario to go with him in Vale City, he told Lucario that as long as he got rid of Team Galactic, he would let it leave. Now that Team Galactic's cotters have been repelled, and Cherry has also made a verbal agreement with him, there shouldn't be any related problems in the short term. Don't worry, I'll do what I say. While speaking, Qingliu took out the Poké Ball that he had previously used to store Lucario from his pocket and pressed it. Unlike the previous red light, a burst of blue light shot out of the Poké Ball and enveloped Lucario, and then quickly dispersed. You are free now. In the spirit of thriftiness of recycling resources, Qingliu put the Poké Ball away. Then he thought that he was still in this twisted space, and he was not sure if there were other people and situations outside. In order not to expose the Blue Eyes White Dragon, he immediately added, but when you go out later, you have to send me out too. Yes. Lucario nodded, and after feeling that the inexplicable sensation on his body had indeed disappeared, he breathed a sigh of relief, but his body became more hunched. Before, he was being chased by the Galaxy team, and all he could think about was recovering his physical strength, squeezing his physical strength to fight back, and so on. He had no time to think about other things. Now that the Galaxy team has retreated, all the things came up at once, and Lucario felt very heavy in his heart. Qingliu looked at it quietly without saying anything. Until Lucario took the initiative to transmit the sound through the wave. Human, where are you going next? We have come here, and the next stop should be Binhe City. What about after that? After that? There is an island to the north of Binhe City, and I should go to see it when the time comes. Lucario heard this and fell silent. It sounded again after a while. Regarding future plans and routes, you seem to have planned them all in advance. Yes, planning ahead is the first lesson of travel. Your path has been prepared, so, what about my path? After Lucario finished speaking, he did not wait for Qingliu to reply, and continued to say, I seem to be homeless. Qingliu could not answer this question. Was Greymon wrong? It just wanted to learn some moves, and was stimulated to go berserk. Was he wrong? It seemed that he had no other behavior except for indulging Grayman a little. Was Lucario wrong? It just obeyed the trainer's command. It seemed that no one was wrong, and it seemed that everyone was wrong, or that the most wrong was not here. But at this point, it doesn't matter who is right or wrong at this moment. Qingliu thought for a moment, and slowly said, if you feel a little confused, go back to find Lee to rebuild the gym. In the whole incident, the person who was truly innocent but suffered the most damage was probably her. Aoyagi didn't have many thoughts about Kikugo and Lucario, but he felt a little guilty about the pink fighting girl who offered to help. When Lucario heard Aoyagi mention this name, his eyes became more focused. She should be the one who needs the most care now. If I go, it will be too sensitive and may have the opposite effect, so I have to ask you for help. Qingliu paused for a moment and continued, tell her the whole story or hide it. You can decide for yourself according to her condition. Lucario raised his head and asked, you mean, if I tell her what happened and she hates you, you will never meet her again in your life? Qingliu shook his head, whether it's you or her, as long as we are still alive, there will always be a day when we meet. I won't hide. When that day comes, I will explain it to her in person. After that, Qingliu slowly stood up and stretched out his hand to Lucario, so, for the sake of our unexpected encounters in the future, please take good care of her first. Lucario hesitated for a moment, stretched out his claws and let Qingliu pull it up. Qingliu took the 3 Pokemon back into the Poké Ball, let Lucario's wave power wrap around his whole body, and flew into the air. Ga. Ga. Roar. The Pokemon at the Fountain of Farewell gathered together reluctantly, watching Qingliu leave. Qingliu waved to these enthusiastic and simple Pokemon. I'll bring you food when I have time. With a flash of light, Qingliu passed through the twisted space and returned to the jungle. It was completely different from when he came. The jungle was quiet and deserted in the evening. Lucario put away the power of the wave guide, looked at Qingliu and said, then, let's separate here. Yes. Lucario turned around and took a few steps, and seemed to think of something and stopped again. The voice transmitted by the wave guide sounded in his ears. Human, don't die before the promised day comes. Qingliu nodded, yes, goodbye. Goodbye. The man and the dog turned around, and then took steps in completely different directions until the 2 figures completely disappeared in the depths of the jungle. After writing this plot, I feel a lot more relaxed. As many readers have said, this plot is not very good. Today, it was windy and rainy. Sitting on the bed, my mind suddenly became clear. Thinking about it, it is indeed true. At that time, in order to rush to Sanjiang, the plot was accelerated. It was originally planned to be put on the shelves, but the editor suddenly took a week off and there was no news, which resulted in the inability to put it on the shelves. My mentality was wrong. In addition, it was also affected by some extreme comments. The content I wrote is not bad, but it feels barely average. In the next chapter, I want to find the previous rhythm and try to write more comfortably. The chapter name also has this meaning. In addition, I usually don't care about comments. I will delete them only if they are too shabby or affect the viewing experience. I won't do that in the future. If there are stupid comments, I will provide one-stop service, so as not to affect my writing state. If you find that some good comments or pertinent suggestions are gone, it should be that the bug mentioned in this chapter by Kidian was swallowed after I modified the content of the chapter. In addition, this is my first Elf Plus digital fanfiction, and it should be the last one. Many ideas originally prepared for the next book will probably be written later. There will be more updates in the evening, so that's all. I wish everyone a happy Arbor Day. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.